call to order this July meeting of the Public Works Commission. Let's see. Jan, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand. Put your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can we have roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Britton,
Present.
Commissioner Dunbabin,
Here.
Commissioner Lakevold,
Here.
Vice Chair Gretton,
Here.
and Chairperson Hayes.
Here.
All present. We have a quorum.
Excellent. It's time for approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any comments on the agenda or would like to make any changes to the agenda? Okay, moving forward, any announcements, upcoming city events or otherwise? Anyone? Okay.
Announcements, upcoming city events, yes. Sister City is having a gala at St. Cross on July 26th from 4 until 8, fundraiser. And our Hermosa Beach Historical Museum is also having a fundraiser at St. Cross on August the 16th at 6 p.m. And then the museum is having an opening of a jazz and punk musical display tomorrow night between 6 and 8. That's it.
Okay, also, Kiwanis is hosting the student exchange students from Loretto at a picnic at the park on Wednesday, July 30th. And it's kind of a fun day and encourage this different commissioners to come out and participate. We feed them, we play games with them, and the fire department does a tug of war with them. And it's kind of nice to have some of the city people meet some of the students from Loretto.
All right, thank you very much. No presentations tonight? The Public Works Director's Report. Mr. Director.
Thank you, Chairperson Hayes, Commissioners. I have just a couple brief updates tonight. Actually, the first is an announcement. I'd like to say that on Tuesday, August 12th at 10:30, we're going to be having a dedication for the Greenbelt Accessible Trail. This is now the conclusion of our Greenbelt Path. Project's done. We're still doing some project closeout, but that dedication is scheduled for August 12th at 10:30. Meeting place will be the Greenbelt at the corner of Pier Avenue and Valley Drive. So there'll be additional announcement information posted to the city website and other platforms that we have to get the word out, so hope to see you there. The only other thing that I will highlight is I always like to give updates on just ongoing engineering staffing as it's a direct input to CIP delivery. We still have 2 open engineering positions on the team, an assistant engineer and a senior engineer position. Senior engineer remains vacant and it's active recruitment, so we are still looking. It's going to be open until filled. The assistant engineer, we are working through a interview process at this time, but it is also still open. So team is aggressively working to try to fill, but it does remain challenging to fill civil engineering positions in a challenging market. So we'll continue to provide updates as we work to fill those slots. That's all I have for my director's update, and I'm happy to jump to activity reports unless you have any questions.
Nope, activity reports it is.
Okay. So we have one activity report the month of May for this agenda. Kind of some of the non-CIP highlights, things that kind of keep us busy, unique to that last month. We have a little bit elevated activity in grant applications. There was ongoing work with the COG on Measure M applications for our bus stop pet safety project and the PCH aviation mobility. Those are two existing CIPs that we've been working to try to supplement funding. There was some follow-up work on that with the COG in metros. They're beginning to continue to review those applications. We are hopeful for some type of Measure M award, but it's still pending on both of those. We also submitted a grant application to SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments, for surface transportation block grant funding for paving. This is the only grant I've ever seen that allows paving as a scope item. It's highly competitive. So fingers crossed. I don't know that we'll know for several months if we get it, but we had to at least apply and see if we had a chance to get it. So I'm hopeful on that one, but we'll wait and see. Other things that kept us very busy in the month of May were budget preparation through assisting for the new fiscal year budget. That always is an active time in the spring leading up to through June before budget adoption, as well as the annual SOAR levy that we have to get on the tax roll every year. There is quite a bit of work that goes into that to get that on the tax roll, but it's something that hit us in May. Those are moving into some of the public works operations and maintenance team items. There's a number of activities. They are a very busy division, public works. A few things that I want to highlight are they made significant improvements to the Valley Park restrooms. You may have noticed it was shut down for several weeks. The team went in, they removed all the fixtures, they redid the flooring, they repainted, and then reinstalled all the fixtures. So it was a bit of a facelift to those restrooms. They also replaced all the partitions, which were in need of, they had some abuse to them, so they needed to be replaced. So it's looking pretty nice. I encourage you to go by there. One of the other big improvements that they did, our team, actually both operations and engineering, worked together on a new mini split system for our AV room for council chambers. You may notice the doors closed and you don't hear the noise of the whirring. So that was a much needed improvement to our council chambers operations. We've continued deploying trash cans, and another enhancement that our O&M team has done, if you go to Pier Plaza, they began powder coating the benches. We used to paint them every year, but with the salt air that we found a better opportunity to powder coat. The finish is much cleaner, and I think it's going to last a lot longer. It looks really nice. That concludes my activity report update. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Question on the air conditioning, split system. Was that strictly to address the equipment cooling and not having the door open, or does it have some bearing on the typical temperature of this very chamber?
The primary concern was the longevity of the equipment. There was actually an AC duct in there, but it was insufficient to keep the room cool given the growing need for more electronic equipment to run the AV system. So it was sized correctly to handle the load that we needed in there, but really to save the equipment.
Okay, so this room is known for typically being kind of cool, so I didn't know if it was going to affect that at all.
Potentially unrelated. I'll have to check with the team if they're running it a little bit cooler now that we're not trying to transfer cool air in there, but possibly.
All right, just curious, thanks.
Yep. Thank you.
Ready? Yes, I just had some comments. First of all, I went to the Valley Park restrooms to see what they looked great. So, and they were being well used, so it wasn't like I could inspect everything, but they looked 100% better. Also, I went to South Park, and it's starting to look much better with the new bushes and the new plantings. I did have a question about the police substation, and I'm just kind of curious. Is there a restroom in that police substation, or do you know?
Is this the
one
you're talking
down
about the
on-
one in Lot C garage? Or
Yeah, the one at the garage. The one that's, isn't there one down at the parking lot?
Parking structure.
Yeah, B.
There's one in parking structure C. There is a small police substation there. I honestly can't recall if there is a restroom in there for staff or not.
You know, I was just curious. I read that y'all had done a bunch of work on it, and I assumed that was the substation you did the work on.
Yeah, I think one of the major there were a few different things that they did there, but one of the major additions they did is they updated a space so that they could put a small sleeping quarter device. It's one of the things that our police team that works, all out 24/7 provides a place for officers to rest if, either before shifts or in between shifts. They don't really have a dedicated place to go, but it was something for the health and wellness of our officers. So it was the quietest location where we could store this. They actually did a lot of research to find this specialized sleeping pod that is, somewhat, buffers the sound and light to be able to accommodate that while there's other activity going on adjacent to it.
Okay. And last but not least, the community services of the police department, the building that had the fire down here on Valley. What is happening with that?
Right. It's going to be covered in our CIP update. And I don't know, Saad, would you like to give an update on that?
For just that project? Sure.
So why don't we
I was
just,
just
It's a
wondering what
CIP. So we have at mid-year, we created a CIP to restore the electrical connections there. So right now the building's vacant. I don't know how much, are you looking for questions on the CIP or on
I was
what the
curious,
plan is in general?
Well, I was just curious, is there a date where y'all are thinking that it might be completed?
Right.
And so I can wait until the CIPs come up, or,
Yeah, I was going to present an
Would you-
update specifically for that project as part of the CIP update. Yes.
you just want to wait until then?
Whatever you like. I can.
I don't care. My main reason for asking is that I didn't realize that the reason for all the police parking over at the community center was a result of that building being closed. And, there are a lot of people who use the community center for meetings, for tennis, and other things. And so they're always asking me, when is it going to be completed so that we can get our parking back? And
Correct.
I was just looking for a kind of a date.
So we have, that project was actually sent out to advertise. I believe last month we got bids. A lowest responsive contractor was selected. This contract was a contract below the threshold to take to council, so it's actually going to be moving along quite a bit faster in the timeline. We're looking to select the contract and start work on that in August, and work should be wrapped up sometime in September. And yes, the CSO officers, because they're not able to utilize that building at all, they wouldn't be parking near that building, so it is affecting parking at the community center. So we're looking to get that addressed as soon as possible.
I didn't realize that they had been moved up to the community center.
Yeah.
And that's why the parking was being taken up by them. So, thank you. I didn't mean to move out of line.
No
I didn't
worries.
realize it was that far out. For some reason, I thought it was probably going to be closer, and I just hadn't looked at it earlier. So,
Yeah.
thank you. That was it.
all right. I think that's it for activity reports. Let's move on to CIP status report.
Okay, thank you. Our city engineer, Saad Malam, is going to give that update as we load up some slides.
All right. Okay, good evening. Commissioners and Chairperson Hayes, I'm excited to present the first CIP update for this brand new fiscal year 25-26. I just wanted to note a couple of items, and in these slides, I'll just go over, I've kind of categorized them based on where things are in the phase of the project. So hopefully that helps out a little bit. Whoops. Okay, so starting off, as Director San Clemente had mentioned, the Greenbelt project has been completed. It's currently in its closeout phase. I do want to note that we do have the ribbon cutting scheduled for August. That project's been completed, as has been the Civic Center charging stations. As of June, we were waiting for one final building inspection. That's moved along, so both of these projects are officially completed. Closeout, just closing out the back end of the projects. Construction's completed, and the facilities are available for public use, or as far as charging station goes, they're available for police and city use. Moving on to, projects that are near completion. I know one of the projects that's one to present an update on is Clark Building renovations. We're expecting completion for Clark Building next week. We have the final electrical inspection scheduled for later this week, as far as the final building inspection scheduled for early next week. That project was slightly delayed initially due to just getting permitting from Southern California Edison, and then later on there was some equipment that had come damaged, and we were just waiting for that long lead item to be delivered. It was delivered this week. It's being completed, installation, and we are looking forward to the final inspections for that.
What was the equipment that was damaged?
It was specialty lighting fixtures. They are lighting fixtures that also serve as emergency backup lighting. I think similar to the setup in here, they're similar to what's around the edge of the council chamber wall and the ceilings. Yeah, they're the linear light fixtures. The next project that's nearing completion is the annual paving project, which included Lot A paving as well. The only item pending for this project is final striping in certain locations. We're just waiting to get the striping contractor scheduled for the final locations. The major portions, Pier Avenue, Valley Drive, Lot A, all the striping's been completed. There are a few remaining items where striping and signage is still pending. And then lastly, South Park, CIP 603, South Park Slope Irrigation and Landscape Improvements Project is in its last phase. The majority of the project is complete. It's substantially complete. The fencing, the main construction fencing around the project is scheduled to be removed next week. And it'll be replaced with just temporary landscape fencing for the maintenance period for the landscape to establish. And I wanted to move along to some projects that are going to be awarded soon. We are planning to bring the Greenwich Village North Undergrounding Project to City Council for award this coming Tuesday. And then the CIP 630, the Community Center Gas Repair Project, is currently being advertised. We're expecting that to be bid opening later in August. And then the timeline for construction will probably be around September. September, taking that to City Council and construction starting in October. As I mentioned earlier, Base 3 electrical improvements, which is Base 3, that project has, the contractor has been selected. It's going to be on a faster timescale. It's not, it doesn't need to be taken to City Council for contract award, so that'll be something that City Manager has authorization to award. And we're looking to wrap that up in the next couple of months as well. Kelly Court's improvements, we are finalizing design, or we have finalized design for Kelly Courts. Kelly Courts is set to be set for advertisement next week. It'll be bidding for about a month. We will get that back, and start of construction for Kelly Courts slated for October 2025.
Question on that one?
Yes.
The CIP report mentioned some minor changes since it last went out. Anything you'd care to highlight or summarize there?
So some of those changes had to do with fencing. Some of them had to do with fencing color. We have added padding along the wall for additional safety measures. And we've also revised the separation in the fencing to reduce the size of that, to make it smaller, to make it more difficult to climb, or try to mitigate that issue that was an issue prior. So those were the main items that were called out for, and those were items that were called out during the council deliberation.
And we talked about the padding in this very meeting, so I'm glad I asked, and I appreciate the response.
Of course. And then lastly, not lastly, but the next set of phasing that I wanted to bring to your attention is projects that are currently under construction. The annual sewer improvements project is currently under construction. It's slated to be wrapped up in about a month. There is currently a redesign in the very last portion that we're waiting for. There was some conflicting utilities, which required a redesign. So that is part of the delay in that project. CIP 699, the Lot C elevator modernization project, which is separate from the overall Lot C structural improvements, has already started. It started this week, and it's slated to be completed in early August. And this is only tied to modernizing the elevator shaft, and the doors itself. And then the last project that's currently under construction, which doesn't quite affect the city of Hermosa Beach yet, is the Hermosa Avenue Green Streets project. This is the project that's in collaboration with City of Torrance and City of Redondo Beach. The earlier portions of this project are in City of Torrance, and the construction for those portions have been started already. Construction for in portions of City of Hermosa Beach, we have worked with them to schedule that after the summer months, so that it doesn't impact our summer traffic and summer season.
Comment on this slide on the sewers. There's a pretty extensive description of various surprises that you had and mishaps on this. I appreciated your inclusion of those descriptions in terms of being accountable for that they will cause modest delays, but at least the information is much appreciated there, so thanks on that.
Great, thank you. And lastly, I wanted to touch base on projects that are in preliminary design. CIP 623, which is the next phase of the pier structural repairs, is currently, we have received the proposal to begin the design from the designer. We're going to be reviewing and evaluating that to move that forward in design. Just the design for this portion of the work, similar to the last time that the pier project was in design, is expected to take at least about a year. It's going to be something that goes through a coastal commission, and their process is going to be quite lengthy. So we wanted to get ahead of that, get the design out of the way while we've already prepared and budgeted for construction later in the fiscal year. And then the next the next project I wanted to touch base on is the Real-Time Crime Center. This is a project that is Public Works is supporting the police department for the grant, the federal grant that has been received. We're providing support in terms of evaluating contractors and making sure that the federal grant provisions are met in that selection for the camera installers. And lastly, the last update for design projects is CIP 111, which is the gateway and wayfinding signs, which is in conceptual design. The last update was that we were working with the designer to finalize their design scope. That's been done. They are underway with the remaining portions of conceptual design. We're expecting them to present their findings for new updates, and those will be presented before Public Works Commission prior to taking them to City Council.
So question there. Our council likes to change things, and so are we doing this at an early enough point where changing things will be reasonably inexpensive?
Is this specific to the gateway and wayfinding project?
I'll probably ask this question 2 or 3 more times today, but yes.
Okay. Yes, that's the exact purpose. Once we get initial conceptual designs for the various types of signage, we want to bring that forward, get consent for moving forward with whichever designs. There's going to be a selection, a variation of conceptual designs that could be moved forward.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question about the real-time crime center. The cameras, are these cameras that'll be around the city that they can check out, or is this the concept?
Correct, yes. So this is a continuation of camera installs that have already been installed around the city in various locations. The intent of this is to get locations within the city that are going to be, that we can install cameras more readily, that will not require additional electrical connections or any other connections. So part of these is installation of solar-powered cameras. Other portions are finding locations that are kind of compatible with the type of cameras that the police department's looking to install.
Okay, will these be in the neighborhoods as well as downtown?
It is primarily in the downtown areas and the major arterial streets. So not quite on PCH, but there's locations identified on Artesia. There isn't really a need, there isn't really, I guess, it's not intended to be in direct neighborhoods, more so to identify areas where cars would be going through, just to try to get in and out of the city. And I think the specific locations are something that the police department is, we're working with the police department to kind of finalize locations.
Okay. The reason I brought it up is our new chief-to-be spoke today at Kiwanis, and there's been a real concern of people running stop signs, both cars and bicycles, but a lot of these are in the neighborhoods or like on Valley and other areas, and I don't know what, but I think they should definitely look at expanding to other parts of the city, because that's where you have, pedestrians and children walking, and that's could be a concern.
We can definitely look into specific locations and give an update on that.
And I think too, the intent of these cameras would not address those kind of concerns at stop signs. I think these are more kind of peripheral locations to observe things. Higher volume streets, more downtown core, or peripheral arterial or collector roadways, not really in residential streets, but not intended to do automated like stop sign enforcement. I don't think that's the intent.
And I had schools written down, so obviously, yeah.
I got one project I'd like to, thank you. I've got one project I'd like to highlight. It's 438, the stormwater dry wells. It's about on page 1, about a third of the way from the bottom in white there. It looks like this activity will be restarting in the upcoming fiscal year. There's mention of grants and doing some preliminary assessments. And so I'm glad that that's resuming. We do have these water cleanliness requirements that I believe come from the federal level, and if they're not met by some date, there can be some pretty stiff fines. And this is, to some extent, a significant a replacement for what was once the proposed Greenbelt infiltration project. So I was going to add that it's also mentioned that there are plans to do some public outreach on this. My understanding of these dry wells, and we'll learn more as we go, is that these are not nearly as intrusive, if even noticeable. But it's good to see that there will be outreach related to that based on the lessons we learned in the previous go-around. The concepts I've seen there, just for the public, most of the wells are, I believe, on PCH in the south end of town, and I think there were perhaps 3 up near Prospect and 7th Street. and so we'll want to especially look at that area. And so just want to highlight that's going, and I like the way you're approaching it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I had a question. On my question about the community services for the police, what number of CIP is it?
At CIP 633 for base 3 electrical
Wait a
improvements.
second.
633.
633?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the only one, or is there?
That's the only one
Oh,
for base 3. Yes.
Okay, so what else is going to be done to that building as far as, once the electrical is completed? Is there anything else?
No, so the other improvements have already been completed with our operation and maintenance team as far as repainting, restoration has already been completed with the environmental contractor. And the remaining aspects are upgrading the electrical panel so that we don't anticipate anything like this happening in the future, and upgrading the electrical conduits within the building itself, just for safety and kind of bring them up to standards.
Okay. And once again, since I was out of line as far as the South School before the CIP, before we got into the CIPs, I didn't want to say that, good job at the South School property, that it is, or South Park, excuse me. It looks really good, so that was it. I didn't have anything else.
Just a short comment. The new Greenbelt section is quite nice. I've been walking it several days a week in the morning. And everything seems to be growing back really nicely on the edges. Was even able to observe a young family of owls up in the pine trees a few months ago. So it looks really nice. And it mixes well with the rest, and it provides a really nice surface for those who might find that easier to traverse than the wood chips. So
Thank you.
nice job.
Thank you.
I have a quick question about the Greenwich Village project. It was my understanding that the bids had come in significantly over what they were budgeted for. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that means? Because there's, they're being assessed and what that whole process is.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Chair Hayes. So I have really good news on that we have, the pricing is now within the bond amount. We had some additional follow-up work with Southern California Edison, where we really went through their invoice. Our senior engineer, Brandon Arrojo, deserves all the credit to really go through that invoice. And we're able to reduce some of the tax charges that were on there that have brought it within the bond amount. So staff is actively working on finalizing that report to get it posted for the 22nd meeting.
So basically, Edison was overcharging us.
There was a mistake on the
Over-invoicing us.
that was not an easy thing to catch. And so it really took some digging to sort out all the costs, but there are a lot of different charges and fees associated with these districts. And so it's fairly complex to put it together. And I think you'll see when we post the staff report, all the elements that go into it. But the good news is it looks like there are enough funds by the originally determined assessment amount to cover the cost of the project. That's our belief right now, and so we're looking to bring it forward.
Is the contingency still intact?
Correct.
Okay, great. Great news. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else on the CIP update? All right, moving on to public comment. I don't see anybody in the audience, and we do not take public comment online for general public comments. So moving on to commissioner comments. No response to public comment. Any brief announcements? Reports on subcommittee roles? Any comments on the matter within the jurisdiction of the commission? I have one quick question. At some point recently, they put a stop sign at the intersection of Monterey and Gerondo. You know what I'm talking about?
The one was added about 2 years ago, or
Yeah, it.
we made it all
something like-
way? It was a
Yes, it was.
side street only. It was a
Correct.
one-way stop, and we added, Redondo actually added 2.5
Right,
years
so
ago, I think.
that intersection is mostly Redondo, is it not?
We own, the city limits are really the northerly sidewalk and I think the parking lane, so majority of it lies in Redondo.
I was going through there and it could use some rapid flashing beacons, but that's not under our purview apparently.
Unfortunately, they're not compatible with always stop control. You can only put the RRFB system on a yield control intersection.
Okay.
The only other potential upgrade, there are other mitigating options, but that would not be an option at that
right.
location.
Good to know.
Yep.
Chair Hayes, I do have something that occurred to me, a meeting that I attended. A meeting was held recently with the school district regarding the now Vista School Neighborhood Transportation Management Plan. Staff's Doug Kraus held that meeting, and the purpose of that is to review how things have gone over the past year in terms of safety and traffic management, how the existing mitigation measures are working, and they do seem to be working well. And that is, in the last couple of years, the enrollment went up at North School when they added, I think, an extra grade a year ago. And so we've got some pretty good experience under our belt now at that increased enrollment, and things still seem to be going pretty well without the need for any additional or extraordinary mitigation measures. Thank you.
I was going to ask who is responsible for the crosswalk timings or the crosswalk setups on Pacific Coast Highway and Pier and I think it's 18th or 21st? I was out walking the other day and just noticed that it seems to be set up for only pedestrians in one direction, and then cars only in one direction and cars only in the other direction, and then cars on PCH at both of those. And I was kind of curious, is that we that set up, or is that Caltrans or
Which location? I'm sorry, Commissioner
PCH,
Legvold.
Pacific Coast Highway and Pier?
Okay.
Because there's essentially a T, although there is a little stub that comes out there. And then I think it's 18th. I'm not sure.
In 18th.
I was out walking
Right.
a few
So
weeks ago. And
all the Pacific Coast Highway, the roadway, and all the signals on it all fall under Caltrans jurisdiction.
Okay.
To the extent that we do receive requests or complaints, we do try to facilitate those with Caltrans, but it's ultimately up to their decision to make modifications. At Pier and PCH, and it was actually part of a city-led project, we just completed a signal upgrade at that location probably 2.5 years ago. It was a long-standing project that completely changed all the phasing at that location. It was always a concurrent pedestrian crossing, and now it's an exclusive ped crossing.
Right.
And that was originally put in because of concerns of the conflicts of right turns occurring with the concurrent ped phase just not being very compatible or safe. And so there are a little bit longer delays at that location, at least at Pier PCH, but it was a trade-off with safety. But if there are specific concerns of phasing or timing, I definitely feel free to reach out and we can take a look.
I think it could also be signed better to let the motorists especially know that it's either pedestrians or cars, never both, because not everyone appears to understand that from what I observed on this one walk.
Okay.
So, and I also wanted to mention that I reported a hive of bees, and that was removed pretty quickly. So that was also well done.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the consent calendar. I'm going to recommend that we split these and we approve these individually, only because there are different people who were here. We couldn't approve the March report because we didn't have quorum of attendees. So are there any motions on the March Public Works Commission minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes of the March Public Works Commission meeting.
And I will second that. And if I recall, who were the three
I
attendees?
abstained.
Okay, so it was 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so let's take roll call on the March meeting.
And we'll do a audio vote. Commissioner Britton, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunbabin,
Abstain.
Commissioner Lakeville,
Abstain.
Vice Chair Gretton,
Aye.
and Chairperson Hayes.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. The minutes for the March 19th meeting are approved.
All right, and then for the May meeting, any motions?
I move
I move.
we approve the minutes of the May Public Works Commission meeting.
And I'll second that.
All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Britton,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunbabin,
Yes.
Commissioner Lakeville,
Abstain.
Vice Chair Gretton,
Aye.
and Chairperson Hayes.
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
All right, no items removed from consent calendar. We are on to public hearings. The public hearing is the request to remove and replace one tree at 1838 Valley Park Avenue. Do we have a staff report?
Thank you. So for this item, and Andrew, correct me where I'm wrong, there was a request by the original applicant to continue the public hearing, and Kate jumped in as well. My understanding is that we do need to go to public comment before we continue the hearing.
Yes, that's right.
All right, then seeing no one for public comment in chambers, do we have anybody online for public comment?
We have no public participant looking to make a comment on this item.
Okay, then this item will be continued until the next meeting.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
Do we need a motion for that, or just automatically?
I think I'm sorry. With this, I think we are going to do a motion.
okay. Do we have a motion to continue this item to the next meeting?
I so move.
I'll second it.
All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Britton,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunbabin,
Yes.
Commissioner Lakeville,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gretton,
Aye.
and Chairperson Hayes.
Yes.
Motion is approved to move this item to the next meeting.
All right, matters for commission consideration, city yard project delivery. Do we have a staff report?
Okay, yes, yep, we're gonna, just one moment, please. We're gonna pull up some slides. While he's doing that, I know staff is excited to be able to bring this to commission tonight. This project has been on the books for a long time. Talks about the city yard have been ongoing for many, many years, and it's definitely due. Our city yard needs to be repaired or replaced. We have a number of deteriorating buildings. The urgency is growing every day for doing improvements to the city yard. Over the last couple years, as we bring this item, it has been a longstanding CIP. We have had discussions, particularly at study session with City Council as well as Commission, and there seemed to be a desire over the last couple of years from certain council members to consider various alternative project delivery models. And what I mean by that is we typically, when we go to bid a project, our standard is the design, you design it, then you bid it, and then you bring in a separate contractor to build it, versus doing other alternative models like a design build delivery, which we'll talk about a little bit more. At the last study session, City Council wanted to get further input from the Public Works Commission. That's why we're here tonight, to get your input on the preferred alternative of which delivery model to move with. Staff is eager and ready to advance either method upon input from the Public Works Commission, and we would ultimately bring this to City Council, likely in the August meeting, so that we can continue on with the project. One thing that I want to fully emphasize is that this is not a completely funded project. Currently, our CIP has $1 million budgeted in this current fiscal year. There's also $900,000 in set-aside reserve funds in the CIP. So we got close to about $2 million, but really we're looking at order of magnitude only, about 15 to 20 million to deliver this project, including all the costs, because we have design, there's environmental cleanup, and the construction of any new facility at that location. So there is a fairly big gap. The good news is that there's sufficient funds in there to really kick this off and get it moving. That could largely cover a lot of the soft costs and really help refine what the scope of work is for this project and really refine what that cost estimate's going to be. But there's work that needs to be done to get to that point. So we do have enough funds to get going, but financing is going to need to be an ongoing discussion to figure out how we pay for the remainder. But we need to do some work to get to that point so we really know what we're looking at financing. And so with that, I'm going to introduce John Osqui, one of our senior consulting engineers that works very closely with our city team, who's going to take the commission through the two different delivery options in a little bit more detail. John, would you like the pointer or the clicker?
Oh, yeah, please. Thank you, Director San Clemente, Chairman Hayes, members of the Public Works Commission. Delighted to be before you tonight. It is indeed a project that we are very, very happy to kickstart it. It's been on the books, as I understand it, for a few years, maybe longer than a few years.
John, if I could interrupt. Andrew, is the mic working?
90,000 years.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that the viewers online can hear.
It is. I think it's on.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And we are happy, very happy for it to see the daylight as we are starting the first part of the process. As Director San Clemente mentioned, thank you very much. As he mentioned, the City Council at a recent meeting tasked the staff to bring this item before you so that you would have a purview of what is it going to take to deliver this project and a couple of options that is going to be, we're going to be discussing it a bit tonight, and hopefully you will be able to reach a consensus and make recommendation to the City Council. And I think Director San Clemente intends to present this item to the City Council at its next meeting, actually in August, so that we can hopefully start the process in earnest. Essentially, as far as the delivery method of the project, building the project, implementing this long-awaited project, there are two methods that we are considering. One is a very traditional method, which is called design, bid, build. Public entities, including the cities, for years and years, that was the only option for them to deliver a public works construction project. That was by law. State of California Public Contract Code defined how a project had to be advertised, how it had to be bid out. You essentially had to pick the lowest responsive and responsible bidder among. You had to create a level playing field by providing adequate information to all the bidders in the market to be able to bid on your job fairly and squarely. And then prior to doing that, you had to complete a set of plans and specifications. Typically, you would hire a team of qualified engineers and architects to design a project for you. You would know exactly what the end product is going to be look like because it was a deliberate process. Very involved with city staff, working closely with a team of architects and engineers to define the scope, to define the project, and the outcome. And that's how you would put what is referred to generally as a set of plans and specs. And that's how you would bid it out. The contractors would be able to see exactly the detail of what's going to be done and how it's going to be done. And because of that, because there was adequate information, presumably there was, again, an opportunity for them to provide a bid that was accurate and according to what you wanted to get it done. Then you would select the lowest bidder. and they will start the job. Typically, you will have a team of qualified personnel, including construction managers and inspectors to watch over the job to make sure that the contractor is delivering the product and the project according to what you had specified. For years and years, that was the only method available to the cities to get a project done. Then in 2015, if I'm not mistaken, the law allowed the cities to use another method, delivery method, which is called design-build. Design-build for 20 years prior to that had been experimented in this state of California, particularly with universities and higher education institutions. By law, they were allowed to implement and utilize that method of delivering projects successfully. And because of that, the state legislature allowed the cities in 2015, and became law, to use the design-build, the traditional, what is referred to, the traditional design-build. In a traditional design-build, usually the cities or the entity's jurisdiction would develop a set of documents, conceptual design, which is generally referred to as a bridge document. And that would give a taste, that would give a picture, a conceptual picture of what the project is going to look like. Then they would go out to the market, and instead of hiring a contractor to do the project because you don't have enough information to build the project, they will hire a pre-qualified, through a pre-qualification process, a qualified team of design builders. This is where contractors will team up with a partner. Their partner would be a designer firm. They will be the entity that they are now directly dealing with the city. Their job would be to develop a set of plans and then to get those plans, make it into reality, build the project for you. The difference in here is that at the time that you award the project to a qualified design build team, you will have a maximum guaranteed price proposed by the contractor at the outset. And that's how you would award the contract. Is it going to have hiccups? Absolutely. Are there going to be surprises? It has been proven that there will be surprises, and then sometimes you have to hackle with your design build team to get the project done the way you wanted to get it done. Because of all of these experiments and trials and errors, and as the market and the professionals involved would try to find better ways of delivering projects, then in later, in about, I want to say 2015, 2017, 18, there was this other modified version of the design build process that was called, late in the day, forgive me, which is called progressive design build. Progressive design build, again, was given the authority to mostly universities and colleges, higher education institutions to experiment with that. Why would they call it progressive, and what is different between a progressive design build and a traditional design build is that, again, as I mentioned, when you go to the traditional model of design build, conceptual plans have already been developed by a team of architects and engineers for a jurisdiction. And that's what you put before the design build team. They're actually seeing what you would, your vision. They have a better view of your vision. In progressive, you don't have that. You get, and the reason for that is that you want to get the team engaged early on in the process, much earlier than developing the conceptual design at 30%. You would want to get them involved more because this is going to be a more collaborative process between the entity, the owner, the jurisdiction, and the design build team. You'll bring them early on, right before you have done the programming for your project, to sit down and develop a set of plans that are going to be based on your goals and vision. The caveat on this, though, however, is the internal capacity and the system that you have placed, a jurisdiction has been put in place. Most of the successful projects that are delivered this way are the ones that are completed by entities who have experience in doing that. Many, many years. And why I say that is through that experience, they have developed a set of standards, performance standards for their buildings. They know exactly what they want. They have specified it very clearly so there won't be any surprises. So when they sit down with the design build team, the design build team will have a very, very good idea of what the final outcome ought to be. And then based on that, they develop those plans for you. The traditional design build model, at the outset, when you hire your designer, your design build team, as I mentioned, you already have a maximum guaranteed price. You already know how much you're going to pay for it. And progressive is not like that. Progressive, when you select your team, you don't know exactly how much it's going to cost. You have a rough idea, but you don't know how much it's going to cost. And the reason that it's called progressive is that progressively, through sitting down and dealing with your design team and builder team early on and throughout the process, throughout the phases, then you will develop the scope more, define it more clearly, and then as you go along, you will develop a better and a more precise, progressively precise cost estimate. So when you get to the end of the design process, then you would know pretty much how much this project is going to cost you. Now, here's the deal. At that point, maybe a 15 or 20 million project that we thought it was going to be 15 or 20 million, we would see that it's going to cost 30 or 35 million. What are the options? The obvious option is for the jurisdiction, the city in this case, to contemplate on finding more money to build the project, or negotiate with a contractor, or obviously the last option would be to call it off and say, thank you very much for the design. The contractor is going to charge you some money. You don't know exactly how much they're going to charge you because at the outset they don't separate or delineate between the cost of design and the total cost of the project. So you may have to pay a little bit more as opposed to if you had to design this by using services and an architect only. And the reason that I said internally you have to have the capacity and the system to support a project, because these projects are typically more fast-paced than a traditional design bid build. Because the contractor's interest is in saving time. Saving time means saving money for them. So it is a rapid process. So you have to have a very qualified team of talented engineers on board, talented staff, but mostly for, and I have to be very honest with you, mostly for the cities that are small to medium size, because we don't deal with vertical construction, and vertical construction is very complex in comparison to roadway construction. We don't have necessarily a toolbox to deal with a progressive and fast-paced project like that. So you have to bring people who have the expertise to assist the city and augment the talent pool that you have in order to make sure that you are going to deliver a successful project. And the other thing is, and I think Chairman Hayes mentioned this, and I was listening very carefully and clearly at the outset, it depends on the processes that are already instilled in the method of operation of an organization. If by nature and by practice, the organization would like to go through a very deliberate process, layers of oversight and reviewing and getting engaged with the details of the design in order to make sure that the outcome, the project outcome, is going to be what you had envisioned, then maybe perhaps this progressive design build is not going to be very conducive to delivering a project the way you wanted it to be delivered. The whole argument about an entity undertaking a project like that is saving time. Everyone tells you that if you go to a design build model, either the traditional or the progressive, then you will save time. And then basically saving time is again saving money. But as you will see in one of the slides at the back end of this presentation, that is not necessarily very true for a medium to a small size project, like the one that we are undertaking, although it's 15 to 20 million, but for the ones that are using the model of delivery, other than the traditional delivery model, this is not a very big project. Big projects are 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, or more projects that are complex in nature, layered and very complex. For those projects, if you implemented a progressive design build or design build, you will be saving time, considerable amount of time. But a project like that, as I mentioned, probably will be seeing a 1 to 3 month saving in time implementation. So to put it in perspective, and I did it on just to show you. I don't know. Sorry, lay it on the table here. These are the set of documents that we used to bid out Clark Building. Clark Building, you are familiar, you've been inside of it. I mean, probably you have seen it. I don't know if you have had an opportunity to see what we have done. By the way, it's going to be a fantastic, you're going to like it. You're going to love what the city has done. It's a beautiful project. But it was a expanded, lack of a better term, remodeling. We didn't touch the structure necessarily. Barely we touched the structure. We closed a couple of openings and we opened up another opening to change the location of doors. But other than that, the shell was untouched, and that's where most of the work gets done. It was interior finishes mostly, a beautiful commercial kitchen. But other than that, again, it was beautifying an existing site. Those are the documents for that. The set of plans in a traditional design bid build is very detailed. It's going to tell the contractor exactly what to build. You have schedules in there that shows exactly what doors, what brand of doors you want, the hardware on the doors, the type of switches on the wall, the type of lighting, and the sort of accompanying document, which we refer to as the specifications, tells the contractor of how to build it. So you got a set of plans that tells them exactly what to build, and then you got a set of specifications that is going to tell them how to build it. You don't have that in the progressive design build. You don't start with those documents, so you don't have a clear vision of what your outcome of the design process is going to be. I am going to just outline some of the pros and cons for either one of these options, and we can talk about them in detail a bit more. But for the traditional design bid build, again, something that city staff, most of the jurisdictions are extremely familiar with because we utilize that for delivery of all of our projects. Infrastructure projects, vertical construction. The design team is retained through a qualification-based selection. The design team reports to you. They don't report to a contractor, which is very true in the design build methodology. So the city has full design control, again, without a contractor influence, because the contractor hasn't been involved yet. Then the other advantage of it is that you are going to select a contractor based on a competitive bidding environment. Mostly, when you go through this process, you're ensured that you're getting the best deal that is available in the marketplace, because people compete, contractors compete against one another to get your job. You're adhering to a traditional process that staff is very familiar with, and you get qualified consultants that are going to help you with that. And then the designer becomes your advocate in dealing with contractor in the future, because the designer carries you through the process of construction as well. You rely on their services. But in this case, because they don't have a direct relationship with the contractor, the direct relationship is to you. You sign their invoices. They are your advocates. So they're going to go to bat for you when they need to do that. There are some cons with this option, typically longer project timelines, because you're going through each one of these phases separately. You design it separately. You go through a bid process separately. And then, of course, you start construction. There are potential for revisions in the design. There are errors, omissions. There are always what we refer to as scope creep, because when you start a project, sometimes you change your mind. You want to do things a little differently. So there are the potential for revisions. Construction contract costs not certain until after the bids are received. You have a pretty good estimate of how much they should cost, the project should cost, but you don't know until you receive your bids. And the city owns design risk. Like I suggested, if there are any gaps in the design or omissions, it can lead to change orders and you pay for it. However, having said that, there are things that could be done to circumvent that to the maximum extent possible. You have to make sure that you got the best set of plans and specs that you can produce. Nothing is ever 100%, but there are certain things that you could do in order to make sure that you are coming close to that. One of the things that we have not done in here, but in a project this size definitely has to be considered, is hiring an independent, reputable cost estimating company. These are the folks that are going to come in, take a look at your project at the 60%, 90%, 100%, and their estimates are fairly accurate in my experience. They are qualified enough and they're experienced enough that when you give you a bottom line number, that bottom line number is going to be what you can expect to receive as a bid from your lowest bidder. The other one is a constructability review. When your project is about 90% done and 80% done, you want to bring a qualified team, and typically these are a team of architects and contractors that do constructability review. The benefit of it is that they are looking at your set of plans from a builder standpoint, not a designer standpoint. And they can tell you the issues that you may have with a set of drawings that your architects and engineers have done. And the benefit of it is that if you catch it before you go to bid, then your risk gets mitigated. Your risk gets reduced quite considerably. And then, of course, the other thing that I would very much advocate is to have a qualified consultant that is going to be an owner representative, that is going to be involved with the team from day one. Owner representative, in my definition, would be a very, very skilled, experienced architect that has a tremendous background in construction. Not a construction manager. You don't want a construction manager. You want an architect, because they'll be able to deal with your design team, and they will be able to deal with your contractors. That's the person, or that's a firm that I envision when they get into the construction phase of the project, when everyone is standing back, including your inspectors, hand on the waist, looking at the project site, at the detail that is not working out. This person would be able to pull the architect in, pull the contractor in, pull the inspector in, grab a piece of paper, do a detail, and say, this is how you're going to do it. And then the architect is going to issue an addendum or a clarification based on that. Those are the people that can get the project moving. Because what you don't want is delay in the process. You don't want the contractor to say, I can't work because the design doesn't work. You want to eliminate all of those. Is there a possibility to do that with the design bid build? Absolutely. Absolutely, there is a way of doing that. It's got to be deliberate, though. As far as a progressive design build is concerned, it is definitely a streamlined process because you are designing and building at the same time necessarily, and you are not going through a bid process. That's mostly how you're going to shorten the overall duration of the project. It is purely a qualifications-based selection because you are not selecting your team based on a price because they haven't given you a price yet, as I indicated. So you are purely selecting them based on what they have done in the past, how much these team has worked together in the past. You don't want an architect team that is going to go find a builder and say, let's go bid on the job for the city of Hermosa, or vice versa. You don't want that. You want a team that have worked together for a long period of time. They know each other, they know their staff, they can work well together, and they have delivered successful projects in the past. That's how you're going to qualify them. There is definitely in this method, because the contractors involved from day one, there is an opportunity for trade coordination and innovation, because again, the incentive for the contractor is to get the project done faster and make more money when they can make more money on it. So that's their incentive. Design collaborations between staff, between the city and the design bid team definitely will reduce the risk of added costs. And the design risk is transferred from the city, the owner, to the builder. If there is a design issue that during the course of construction becomes apparent and the contractor has to do some changes because of that, then it's not going to be a change order to the city anymore. Because again, it's based on a negotiated, agreed upon price. They have to absorb the additional cost. So because of that, there's more cost certainty. You're not going to be looking at the end of the project and looking at a considerable amount of change orders. Again, as there are some positive points, there are some points also to be considered that may not work in the favor of the city. As I indicated before, the city cannot independently select designer and builder. Loss of competitive bidding, which as I indicated previously, guarantees almost in certain certainty that you are going to get the best prices available in the market because the contractors compete against one another to get your job. And the final product may not match the city's vision and expected outcome for the project. That depends a lot. That depends tremendously on how you have developed a vision up front. If you don't have a good set of performance specifications, if you don't have an experience of having done that in the past, if you can't tell the contractor and the design build contractor what it is that you expect to receive, they will be surprises. These are actual cases. When you look it up, there is an entity, and I forget, it was in Northern California. They went through a design build process. They didn't, in their bridge documents, they didn't specify ceilings, the ceiling type. So you know what they ended up with? For the entire building, they ended up with open ceilings and looking at exposed ductwork for their HVAC, for their air conditioning system. And the contractor came back and said, there was nothing in there that told me I have to do a drop ceiling. And he was right. And there was nothing in there that prohibits me from installing ductwork. You're going to be looking at it. Yes, you're going to be looking at it, but your bridge documents didn't mention that. So in that particular case, the owner, after negotiating with the contractor, not successful negotiations because they wanted a lot of money to come back and install the ceiling afterwards, they let it go. There are some instances, though, successfully, if there are things that were not anticipated or not articulated enough in the bridge documents or the conceptual plans, that you can negotiate with your contractor and get it done, change it. But it's going to cost you money. So it's not necessarily risk-free. It's going to mitigate it, but it's not going to be risk-free completely. And selecting the design builder without seeing the full project price up front, that may be, again, another challenge that you have to confront. there are some considerations as far as this particular project is concerned. One of which that we know is that the Public Works Yard, its current location, it has unique challenges that it must be fully investigated and addressed prior to the stated project, regardless of the delivery model that we may choose. There are environmental and geotechnical challenges in there that has to be addressed. And again, typically what you would like to do is to give the contractor a clean canvas, a blank canvas to build on. It is not advisable to have a site turned over to a contractor that we know we have environmental challenges and geotechnical challenges with. So the first order of business for us is to do the environmental and geotechnical evaluation, hire qualified consultants that can help us with that process, and then remediate whatever that it's there, and we know there is plenty out there in that site that needs to be remediated. Then we have to create a vision. And how do you create a vision? You hire a qualified architectural firm to come in and tell you what it is that you are trying to build based on your operational model, based on what you would like to do in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years as far as the size of the department, the type of maintenance operation that you are going to have. That is going to decide the size of the offices, if you're going to go with a one-story office or two-story office, or you're going to have a big sign shop or a smaller sign shop. Is it going to be a 2 or 3 bay garage? All of those things need to be spelled out. They need to do space planning. They need to do a complete programming for you. That's going to become the basis of a schematic design. So that exercise, regardless again of which option the city council, you folks and the city council chooses to go with, that exercise we need to go through. Because that's going to define that box, that's going to define that perimeter that you hand over to your designer team if you go through the traditional model, or to the design build team in order to develop it into a full-scale plan. And then, as I mentioned in the previous slide, in either one of the options, you have to have someone that is going to be assisting the city throughout the process. They're going to become your best advocates. They are your experts that you're going to rely on early on, from the early phases of the project, including the environmental and geotechnical evaluation, all the way to the post-construction phase of the project. You have to, it's highly recommended that the city considers hiring an owner's rep to guide you through this process. And the big elephant in the room, money. Financing needs to be identified. Director San Clemente mentioned that we got close to about $2 million in the pocket right now. That is going to be enough to jumpstart the project with the environmental and geotechnical evaluation phases and hiring an architect and owner's rep to start working on the project. But then the big question is, how are we going to procure and where are we going to procure the $20 million or so that is going to be required to complete this project? As I mentioned, in this slide, we try to outline for both options, option 1, which is the design bid build, and option 2, which is a progressive design build, generally referred to as a PDB, the timeline for implementation for different phases and sequencing of the work. So you could see that the first order of business is environmental investigation. How do we do that? We go through a process of hiring a qualified consultant, which is called a request for qualification. We're going to define what it is that we want to get done. Then we invite the qualified consultants to come in and provide a proposal to the city. We hire the most qualified consultant. By the way, as far as professional services, the law in the city of California states that you don't necessarily have to go with the lowest price that a professional consultant provides to you. the basis of your selection is their qualifications. It's called qualification-based selection, QBS. So we will hire the one consultant that we think is going to provide the best benefits for the product that we want to deliver. Based on the recommendations of the environmental consultant, you will hire a qualified contractor, this time through a bid process, meaning that you're going to define what it is that you want to clean up and get done. Contractors that are qualified for performing this type of work will provide a bid. You go with the lowest bid, and you will bring them on board to clean up the site. And as far as the project programming and design is concerned, then you will hire a qualified team of architects and engineers to assist you with that, develop sets of plans that I'm sure is going to look much more voluminous and more detailed than what I shared with you. And then, of course, then we have to secure the financing before we go out to bid to hire a contractor to build the project for you. And then, of course, we will go through a process of bidding the project for hiring a contractor based on the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. And along with that, we have to hire a qualified team of construction managers and inspectors to assist the city with making sure that the project delivery is going to be according to the plans and specifications and successfully delivered. Option 2, the first couple of steps or sequence of work will be very similar to the option 1 in that we have to hire an owner rep, and we have to hire environmental consultants. This time, at the same time, we will hire then, environmental, again, and architectural programming. It's going to be the same as the other one because you're going to define the project before you turn it over to your design build team. You're going to clean it up. And while you're doing that, you can go through the process of putting out a request for qualifications for qualified teams of design builders while you're doing the environmental cleanup so you can save some time. You go through the deliberate and progressive process of designing the project with your team, and at some point you're going to start construction. You don't need to have the financing secured before the 100% design is completed by the design build team, but before you award a contract, a maximum guaranteed price, or negotiate it with the team, you have to have money on hand. And then very similar to the other option, which is design build team, you still have to have a team of construction managers and inspectors that are going to watch over what the contractor is doing to make sure it's according to the plans that have been designed for the project. Overall, we anticipate the project in the first option to take about, the first portions of it, 4 months, 22 months, and then 16 months on the back end of it for each one of those phases. And when you add it all up, you could see that between the two options, there is a potential time savings of 1 to 3 months. Again, I want to say that, but with the caveat that it all depends on the internal operation of the organization. In the design, in the progressive design build, when the team of the design builder is ready, they are ready. When they turn out to the city and they want the documents to be reviewed within a 1 week time period, we have to deliver that within a 1 week time period. They cannot afford to have more time allocated in their schedule because their schedule is pretty tight. They cannot deviate from that schedule. That means that the city team has to be ready every step of the way to step up to the plate and deliver it according to a pre-agreed schedule. There are no slip-ups. So we have to have a structure in-house that can support that, from plan check, the plan check process, deliberations for the design. Again, there is not much opportunity to change features of the design in option 2. Whereas in option one, because you're doing the design process separately from the building process, you have the ability to do that. You can make changes. You can go through a deliberate process. You can go through layers of looking over the design, bringing it before the commission to take a look at the design, taking it to the city council to take it, take a look at the design and probably make some changes before you go out to build the project. Those opportunities necessarily are not going to be available through the other option, which is the progressive design build. We touched on that a little bit, but the approach will, the selected approach will greatly depend on priorities of the city. We have to finally decide which project delivery method is the correct one for us. And maybe something that worked for other entities necessarily won't work for us successfully, and vice versa. Timeline, if the timeline is the goal, reducing the timeline, getting the project done in an expeditious manner, then the progressive design build should be considered seriously. If the goal is to have more control over the design process, competitive bidding is preferred, then the design bid build, the traditional model, might be a better choice. If the transfer of risk to builder is a goal, then we have probably a better choice if we selected the progressive design build. But again, I qualified all of those as I discussed previously. It's not an absolute term. And as far as the budget is concerned, the progressive design build offers effective cost management to its integrated approach because all along the design process, the city is involved and you are looking at the cost for the contractor. But you have to keep in mind that at the end of the day, the contractor is there to make their profit margins more attractive to them and not to the city. And so because of that, it does not necessarily guarantee the lowest overall cost. What are the next steps? Joe, do you want to carry us through the next steps?
Sure, I'll jump back in. Thank you, John. Right, so I think, we're here tonight to, here tonight to talk through these various options for consideration. I think our team is ready to move ahead under either scenario, but it's really at this point we just need selection on what is the best option to do with your input and ultimately going to City Council in August to finally get confirmation of which way we're going to go. But as John mentioned, there are pros and cons with either scenario. So I think we can get either one done, but there are definitely pros and cons with each one. Regardless of whatever delivery model we do choose to proceed with, we are recommending that we move ahead with that owner's representative, that specialist that's knowledgeable, that can help support our busy staff team to get this complex project once and for all over the finish line in where it needs to be and as efficiently as it needs to be. That owner's rep would work closely with our team to help prepare all the solicitations for the various contract mechanisms we're going to need. Under both scenarios, in that bar chart that John showed, there are a variety of contracts we're going to need under either option. Both have several that are required, and so early on things that we're going to need to do is really get the programming done. What is this project contain? What does it really need to be? That's really going to help drive the design and the cost. And ultimately the environmental assessment that needs to be updated so you can better understand what remediation needs to be done with the building and in the soils underneath the buildings currently under there, as this was a former landfill site. There's definitely work that needs to be done there. So those are critical path items to get things going, but the big picture, as John reiterated, is the financing. But we do think that we can get this project successfully started so that we can really narrow in the lens a little bit on what those financing needs are that will put us in a better position to really evaluate what those best options might be. That concludes our presentation. we're happy to answer questions.
Does anybody have any questions of staff?
I do.
Commissioner Dunbatman.
Kathy does.
Ready? Has anything been done with this at all? Has there been any assessment by staff or anyone else as far as what's needed? Or is this starting at the beginning?
So, yes and no to all that. So, we've been preparing, as you can see, we've laid out a plan of action, whether we go one road or the other to move this ahead. There was a prior effort several years ago to take a look at, there was a CIP and there was preliminary design that was done. So we have an initial layout, but it was really a much more simplified proposal and it didn't really get into the detail that's needed. That was several years ago. Current operational needs and challenges are different than at that time when it was looked at. And so we've had some preliminary look as we've started doing some of the facilities condition CIP with the Civic Center. We did start to look at some of the space needs, but it's very preliminary. We really need to get an architect team on board to really assess our needs. And when I say needs, it's the space configurations that John mentioned, like how many desks, how many parking spaces, but really looking at the flow of our yard, and that's something that we're gonna have to work with the designer. How do we get a more efficient operation? If you've gone there, we have a trash bin in the middle of the site. Is that really the best location for it, or is there a more optimal solution for where that could be placed? And that's one of a lot of different considerations, storage considerations that we have. So I think we've kind of started outlining what we need to do, but there's a lot of work to do. In terms of other things that have been done over the years, several years ago, I don't know if it was 10 years ago now, I don't know the exact year time frame, when the oil wells were being considered at that site, the oil company had done assessment, the oil drilling company had done some preliminary environmental assessments for that site, and they'd also had done some as well over here at the storage lot. I think at the time, the plan was that the oil company would come in, they would construct a new city yard at the storage lot, and so we actually do have some preliminary environmental assessments and some soil sampling and cores that were done at that time. To the extent that they are comprehensive enough for what we need now is unclear, and so we absolutely need to update them to the current standards, but it does give us a good starting point to know some of the data of what was done, and we can build off of that. And when we go out to solicit an environmental consultant to come in to update those, we can certainly share that material that was done. So I think it's something we can build off of, but there's a lot more to do.
And what year was this? You're saying 10 years ago, approximately?
There's a variety of assessments that were done anywhere from 8 to 15 years ago, and there are multiple documents that were done over a period of time.
So basically, it's going to kind of be starting all over in a way, or have you looked at them to see if there's anything really usable?
Well, so if there were, for example, when they did cores and they took out soil samples, any contaminants that they might have found there have not been removed, so we know that they're there. I think the challenge is that when they were done, what we don't know is how comprehensive through the site it was done, or whether the testing was only really done where they were proposing to do improvements. And so we really need to bring in an expert professional to look at these to see how much more testing needs to be done beyond what's already completed. I think we can reuse a lot of what was done, but we may need additional testing and sampling. It likely needs to be brought up to current standards, and then any other environmental EIR type process that we might have to follow with it. So I like to say that there is useful information in there that we can build off of. It certainly won't go to waste, but there's a lot more that we need to do to get it to where it needs to be.
So what would you do? Just hearing what John has said, you have an architect, you have a civil engineer, you're going to need an environmental consultant, a landscape architect, I assume, and interior facilities. I know there's some offices, lunchroom, kitchen in the facilities now. I assume that something like that would continue to be there. I mean,
Right.
it's a minor part of it,
Right.
but
Yeah, I mean, we really have to look, I mean, the environmental assessment is going to happen on its own, and then there'll be cleanup that has to happen. What the architect will do, and there'll be a team, the architect will bring in a variety of different disciplines. They'll have a civil engineer, a structural engineer, mechanical engineer, and so on. There'll be a variety of trades under the umbrella of the architect, depending on which model we go with. But there's a lot of, the buildings themselves need to be assessed. I can say pretty confidently that the garage building in the corner is unlikely to be saved. Further assessment needs to be done for the newer structure that was built in the 70s to see if it can it even be kept, is in the wrong location, what other issues are with it. But we have to rethink the circulation on the site. I mean, we need places to store vehicles, equipment, materials, and supplies. We have, when the yard was originally built, it wasn't designed for the technological era.
Right.
All of our 20 team members on the O&M team use computers now. We have, over the years, built very small cubicle stations for them, but we work on a work order process now. There's a lot more electronic documentation that we need to do that wasn't envisioned when this yard was built. And so we have very cramped spaces for them to work. We have changing showering locations that need to be done. We have contractor layover storage. We fix our fleet and maintain it there. But we really have very limited space. And I think one of the other challenges is we currently can't even accommodate all the needs on that site because of the layout, limited facilities. We have storage at 2 other locations. 4th Street, we have our irrigation workshop, and irrigation supplies are stored there, which means anyone that's doing irrigation work has to go to that location on a daily basis. There is time lost to have to travel to that location because we can't have it stored at the city yard. Similarly, we also have storage up at the old Prospect School. That's where all of our electrical supplies and equipment are stored. And so there are regular trips that have to be made across the city to get equipment because there's nowhere to house that at the current city yard facility. There's also other storage in that building for other material needs that we have because we don't really have sufficient laydown or storage area at the yard. So those are a couple more considerations that we have to figure out, but it's a bit of a puzzle, and that's why the programming piece is so important, so that we can really look at what our needs are and what we think they're going to be going into the future, so that we can come up with a plan that can accommodate those.
And where'd you say that second storage is on Prospect?
Yeah, right behind the Fort Lots of Fun Park, the old former Prospect School.
Okay. So would you move, is the plan to consolidate all that in the one storage yard?
It's something that we have to look at as we bring in the design team of what's even feasible on this site. Can we even fit it all there? I think the ideal situation would be to consolidate it, but ultimately we have to make sure that we can accommodate the current needs that are at the city yard. If we're able to bring these into one location, that would be ideal, but we really need to assess it further, and that's why we need to bring a team on that can help us do that.
So have y'all looked at all at maybe putting another building within the yard area?
So we're tasked here with discussing the procurement method. I think we're sliding into what is the scope of the project, which I don't know is a good use of our time. I mean, we can go, I just don't want to get too much into what is this project going to be.
I agree, and I think that is exactly what we need to define as what is the preferred delivery method. And I think that where the scope does matter, and I think to kind of build off of what John Osprey had talked about is, if we are looking at traditional versus the design build method, we still have a lot of programming to do. We don't know exactly what the project is because we have to go through that programming effort. And if you go the progressive design model, you really need to have a lot of these things a lot more defined. That could potentially happen through the programming piece, but there's a lot of questions that need to be answered that we need to work through with the team so we can really refine the scope of this program and get a design completed. So I do agree we need to focus on what is that delivery method based on the pros and cons that we've kind of outlined. And, I think when council originally, or council members had pitched this other alternative model, was really to look at potential to transfer risk or reduce timeline. And I think we've kind of covered some of the pros and cons that go with those, and also potential ways to mitigate those two items through the traditional model. So right now, it's really about what the delivery method is, because we're going to have to program either way, but we just need to get going. Otherwise, this is a key decision point that we need to move on from.
And I agree with you about, we're not here to discuss, I just wanted to see basically what the scope was, where they were going with this before looking at how it's going to be done and paid for. So, thank you.
Anybody else? Tor?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, there was, Director Stafford, there was one very important point that I missed to point out. Learning from past experiences and mistakes, and trying to use the best tools that we have in the toolbox. Every one of us have experienced or have heard of bad contractors who come into town because they were the lowest bidder that we had to choose. There is a way to go around that, to mitigate that. It has been done. It's allowed by the law. City attorney is here. It's a pre-qualification of contractors. We talked about qualification process for the consultants, but there is also, the law allows us to go through a pre-qualification process for selecting the right contractor for the job. So if you were to choose the traditional model of design, bid, build, delivery, I would highly recommend that the city, when we get to that point, consider, after we're done with the design process, to pre-qualify the contractors that can participate in the design process, in the bidding process. You don't necessarily have to go the route of inviting everyone to come into town because you want to build yourself a new yard. You want to get the right people, the right contractors that have the capacity, capability, and the experience to build a municipal maintenance facility. So that's just the point that I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Tor?
Yeah. Wow, that's very loud, isn't it? So I might have misunderstood, but it sounded to me like if we go for the progressive model, the financing, all the money, once we start, everything has to be ready to go because we're on the hook. Whereas in the traditional model, we can do phase by phase, and if we need a year to figure out where we're going to find $15 to $20 million, we have that. Whereas if we do the progressive, it sounds like we're committed, and obviously we can do things in parallel. But did I understand that correctly?
Mr. Chairman, yes, sir. It is in the PDP, when you push the start button, there is no stopping to it.
Right.
Because you go through a fast-paced process of designing it. And again, as I mentioned, at the end of the design process, your contractor would be ready to go to start building the project. Right. And you have to have the money on hand.
Right.
Now, if you didn't happen to have the money on hand, then you have contractually to sever that relationship, tell the design build team, can't do it right now, how much do I owe you for the cost of design? And then you have to negotiate a price. That price is not going to be defined, as I indicated early on, because it's all mixed in with their proposal to design and build it for you. Yes.
Right. And it sounds to me like in either case, the more we can do our due diligence on our side and really be clear on what we need, what it will look like, what the use is, what the scope is, all of these different details, the easier it will be in either case. And having perhaps hiring someone perhaps in order to help coordinate that could obviously be an advantage. I haven't been here long enough in the city or on the commission to know how we finance similar projects or other larger investment projects before, so I don't know how easy it is to find that financing or not, but I do see that might be a potential sticking point to consider moving forwards, in the sense that we're locked in if we go that route.
Okay. All right.
Commissioner Burton?
Yes. Thank you for the thorough presentation, and I've been going through the notes here. What I'm hearing is that, Joe, you're really encouraging us to consider the progressive one. The thing I like about the progressive one, having dealt with contractors and architects, is that oftentimes the architect does something and the contractor comes in and it's not feasible because of materials, because of time, because of electrical or environmental things. And I really like the concept of both of them being involved from the beginning. It doesn't sound like we're going to lose any more control than we had if we did either one of them, because the idea is that they come in with a final project with all those problems worked out, the material and the codes and everything else. And it doesn't seem like it's going to affect the price that much. So I kind of really like the concept of the progressive.
Thank you, Commissioner Brandon. And if I could, I want to be clear too that we're not necessarily recommending the progressive design build. I think it's something that with council's concerns about, like I said, speed and risk mitigation was something they asked staff to explore a little bit more. And I think what we're doing tonight is presenting that there are pros and cons with the two. And I think, one thing that John touched on a little bit, and I'll kind of reemphasize a little bit more, is it really also depends on the city staff and folks like our commission and our council, with the process and engagement level that we're going to want to have with this project and how quickly we're able to move. We're a very busy department. Even with support, we will need support no matter which way we go. But with the progressive model, it is going to be very aggressive in moving. And I think if we are able to conceptually or get on board with more conceptual levels of what the details of what this product's going to be, and we're okay with that, and we're able to go very fast afterwards, progressive might be a good fit. But if we want to have more engagement with the commissions and council and the community about what this project's going to look like and have input every step of the way, the traditional model may be a better fit. And I bring that up especially as we've had input, particularly late on projects, recently in the CIP, as late as contract award or very late in the design. And so often seeing is believing to know what the project is, and I think there's a little bit more faith that has to go into the progressive design model, because it's really that system that you have to set up that there are some unknowns, that you're not really going to see it, and once you go down that road, it's a little bit harder to change it. And so I think it's also the style of what we are willing to do. I think that if it's about risk, there are ways to mitigate the risk either way. And I think John's laid out some great ideas if we go the traditional model of how to do that through independent cost estimates, constructability reviews. There's other ways to do it. If it's time, we're not necessarily convinced that while there will be a very tight time window that's going to go very quickly, overall the project duration's unlikely to be significantly less with the progressive design build. Primarily because there's a lot of other steps that we need to do. The environmental components, the permitting, those are going to add to the duration. So we're laying out some considerations, and that's for commission to help give input on.
Yeah, since this project started 90,000 years ago, as I like to say, and this building, it's not modern, and our equipment has changed as far as what we need for maintenance of the inside for our utilities, for our trucks, and just for room for our staff. And I think the reason also I like the contractor involved, because he can obviously know what is current and what prices are, and we can get a head start on what it's going to cost. There's just so many things a contractor can bring in that the architect conceptually would he'd see the concept but not the cost or the product.
Do we have any other questions?
Yes, I got a couple questions about the options, how they're defined, but I wanted to piggyback and get some clarification about the financing and what I think I read in the report. I think that under the progressive design build, one thing it says that, that the guaranteed maximum price is specified relatively late in the process, usually before the building permits. The point I want to make is, says the city will have financing in place at the time of acceptance of the guaranteed maximum price. So that's one milestone, is actually having the funds secured. And I think I read somewhere, and I'm trying to find where I thought I highlighted, I think it says something about needing to have some type of a financing plan before you bring the design build contractor on board. And and that's something, so let's look at that and I guess see, it looked like that was something that might have been highlighted in the schedule. I guess what I'm saying is that like other parts of the project, even the financing will have different milestones of its own as we go along. So I just didn't want us to have the impression that we necessarily had to have secured $40 million plus before we bring on the design build team.
Absolutely, Vice Chairman. Look, at the end of the day, the money has to be brought in before you can build this project. Even with the $2 million, there is so much design work and preliminary work that can be put in place. Typically, for a $15 million cost of construction, you pay anywhere between 10 to 12% if you were to hire an architect and engineering firm in cost of design. Figure that much out. So it's about a $2 million, $2.5 million design cost. This is not to mention the hiring of an environmental consultant that has to come in, the cost of the cleanup. So point is, the $2 million is not going to complete the entire design phase and cleanup phase and investigation. We still need more money to continue with that. So it is going to be an item that the city team has to start working on from day one. If we get the green light to proceed with either one of these options, doesn't matter which one, but if the city council directs the staff to start, let's say, the environmental cleanup process or evaluation cleanup, from that day one, our finance folks have to start thinking about how they're going to bring in the money.
Yeah.
Because at some point in time, we have to have it in the bank in order to be able to continue with the project. Either way, doesn't matter which option we choose.
Right. And then before I ask my plan questions, I'll sneak in another follow-up question about the rehabilitation, and this has to do with how much risk we might be looking at and how we might have to be flexible in defining the program. Isn't it there's some possibility that we may not know the full extent of rehabilitation until we actually do some demolition?
Typically, Vice Chairman, when you go through a comprehensive process of evaluation by an environmental consultant, you know exactly what you have to clean up. So before you turn it over to a remediation company. You know, these buildings are old. We know they have asbestos. We know they have lead-contained paint, definitely. We know we have stuff under the ground. To what extent are they, is it to the extent that it's going to involve DTSC, Department of Toxic Substance Control, the state? Is it going to involve the Regional Water Board? All of those things are going to become more clear once we complete the environmental assessment process.
Yeah. But, and then just to follow up on that train of thought, isn't it possible, though, that while we may know early, which is a good thing, I like that answer, that the actual remediation may require some parts to be demolished so we can get access to do the remediation?
Yes, absolutely correct. And if there are some thoughts, and we always have to, I think it was mentioned in the conversation, can we repurpose a portion of these facilities? Is it worth repurposing or keeping them in there while bringing them into the overall picture? There is I've been fortunate enough to have spent 10 years working for school districts, and for school districts you usually rely a lot on state funding. And the state has a formula. It tells you if you have an existing building and you want to modernize it, if you're spending $1 more than 50% of the cost of replacement of that, you're not going to modernize it. You're going to knock it down and build a new one. So at some point, by looking at the facility, if I were to guess today, I would say that nothing in there is going to be a part and parcel of a future development on that site. I can tell you that. There is circulation issues in there that is not addressed. There is usage issues, spacing issues. Those have to be considered in the future design. And because of those elements, I don't think you can save anything that is out there right now.
Okay, now that this brings me to my plan questions based on your presentation. You were, part of your defining and contrasting the traditional design build versus the progressive design build, there was one difference in terms of whether you have a not to exceed cost as you could get in the traditional versus what we wouldn't have in the progressive. And then secondly, the traditional, you'd get at least to say the 30% design, I think what you're calling a bridge design, versus something that's less mature, maybe more of what I'll just call a concept design. I assume that those things are correlated. In other words, the fact that you've done more design work and got more maturity is why you're able to get a not to exceed along with that, right? Those are related?
Vice Chairman, I'm going to make sure that I painted an accurate picture of what we presented to you tonight. The reason that I brought up the tradition, it was a tradition design build model that we are not considering. I wanted to compare and contrast because you might have heard about design build, which is referred to as traditional design build, and progressive design build. In the traditional design build, which we are not, that's not one of the either option that we're recommending you consider tonight. In the traditional, you're absolutely correct. You have to develop a bridge document that is typically up to 30% of the design, complete design. The reason you're doing that, because through that mechanism, the design build team at that point in time has to offer to you, that's how you enter into a contract with them, a maximum guaranteed price at that point. You don't have that with a progressive design process, design build process, because that point of decision making is not going to come until the design has been completed 100%.
Okay. So I'm debating whether I should ask why you're not considering.
You don't know.
Okay, why you're not considering the traditional design build? Yeah.
Thank you for that. It's a great question, and I think I can offer a good answer. It does not provide you with a deliberate process of designing the product. It doesn't give you the opportunity to engage the team early on so you can develop a product, a design product that is going to be according to your needs. Those are going to be predicated by the preferences of the contractor. Remember, in that relationship, the architect reports to the contractor. Typically, the contractors are the one that hire an architect to come in and help them to deliver this project. So essentially, the architect answers to the builder, not to you. So that's why the progressive is more desired, and that's why it came later on, after experimentation, and in some cases failed experimentation, with a traditional design build model. That's why it became law later on, because people had experimented and found out that part of the failure of the scheme was because the owners were not getting involved with the design to the maximum extent possible in the early stages and doing it collaboratively with the team that they have selected. That's why the traditional is not recommended here.
Okay, I'm going to continue on this line, if I may, to help us understand a little more. So in the schedule chart, it shows the design bid build versus the progressive design build. And a noteworthy difference is that on the second line of each, the one includes the architectural programming phase. And if I understood part of what you were saying earlier. It sounds like if you're a believer in at least PDB, if not traditional design build, that you believe that there's a lot of value in that, having that architectural programming phase, correct?
Architectural programming is a essential and crucial element of guaranteeing a successful design product, regardless of which option you choose. Doesn't matter if you're selecting a traditional, well, let me not say that. If you're going with a design bid build, if you're going with a traditional design build, or if you're going with a progressive design build. In all of those cases, you have to know and you have to tell the people that ultimately are going to be delivering that design product, what is it that you need, what are your future needs, and what are you going to have in there.
Yeah.
You gotta paint that picture very clearly for them.
And to support what you just said, in looking at the chart, and I don't know who's
Do you have a clicker?
controlling this party here, but it might be useful if we could have that slide for reference. In the top half under the design bid build, here what we see is where it says contract for a project programming and design. So that's where you'd start to do some of that similar work that would be characterized as architectural programming in the lower part under option 2.
That's
Either way, and I agree, there's tremendous value in that phase. And that's why I was actually asking a little bit about, initially, about the difference between the traditional design build and the progressive design build, to make sure that we understood the value of that upfront activity. And I wanted to make sure that you weren't necessarily discouraging that we did too much design work early on, just because in progressive design build, there's a less required maturity level to be obtained before you move forward.
Correct.
So if we wanted to, could we voluntarily, albeit at additional architectural programming phase costs, do a little more work, even though then when we brought the design build contractor on, they might say, oh, you're a little more mature than we expected, but maybe we could work with them and say, well, we did a little more work, but you're not necessarily obligated to that or something. In other words, get more would we consider the idea of trying to get more value out of the architectural phase by extending it a little bit and having more time to better define our needs and requirements?
So, Vice Chairman Griffin, there are defined steps in the design process. You do the programming, you do the schematic design, then you go to the 30%, which is also referred to as a conceptual design. When you hire your programming and design consultant, the architect and engineers team, you're going to define the product that you want to get out of them. You definitely want them to program it for you. In the case of the progressive design build, you don't want to necessarily go to the 30% conceptual design. You don't want to pay for that because you're going to pay somebody else to do that for you. Okay. So you want to stay with the programming and conceptual design, and then you're going to leave it to the progressive design build team to take it from there and take it to the 30%, and then 60%, 90%, 100% design.
Okay, I'll leave it alone for now and maybe go on a little bit more in my comments. Thanks a lot.
Okay, anybody else? I've got a bunch of questions. While we have this slide up, can you explain to me how the design on the progressive design build section, that construction can be started when the design is not completed.
That's one of the benefits of going through that model, because the designer and the builder are the same team. They collaborate very, very closely with one another. They can start some phases of the construction before the design is 100%, and they coordinate that accordingly.
So every other contractor can't start until there's a building permit.
Correct.
So why can this contractor start without all the building permits ready?
Let's assume that by then the site has been cleaned up completely, and then they can start the demolition process, or they can start some rough grading and get not necessarily a permit for building the buildings, but because the design is not 100%, the building official has not stamped the plans, but they can certainly start rough grading or grading the site. So that's why there is an overlap. And that's where the saving in time comes in. Some of those elements are there.
Okay. I've got a bunch. I'm trying to figure out where to start. So essentially, you say in the staff report, city would retain services of a qualified architect through a competitively advertised RFQ process for architectural programming. How far along in the design, what exactly is the product that this architect provides?
Which model?
Progressive design build.
It would be the programming, complete programming, and it will be a conceptual design.
Okay, and so by conceptual design, at some point, somebody has to determine what kind of buildings these are going to be. Are they going to be tilt-up? Are they going to be prefabricated metal buildings? Are they going to be standard, whatever? So at what point is that determined?
Those options are going to be determined later on in the design process by your design build team. The schematic is going to show you how the buildings are going to look like. They're not going to necessarily define the finishes, the types, the roof pitch. Is it flat roof? Is it pitched roof? Those things are not necessarily all very well defined, although the schematic will show you some options. So it is not a well-developed schematic by nature. It's not a very well-developed plan, but it's going to provide you with a good picture of what the outcome is going to look like. It's going to site the buildings. You're going to know which building is going to go where. You're going to have a one-story, two-story. Where is the office building going to be? Where are the shops going to be? Where is the warehouses going to be?
So
and what it's going to look like.
you talked about it being important to work with the design team, or Joe did, to determine operational flow and all of that. So it seems like, is that happening during the programming stage?
That's correct, sir.
So if that's happening during the programming stage, it's not happening with the design builder is not, that's already been predetermined. The design builder is just trying to figure that, okay. So the programming stage, pretty much you're going to have the footprints of the different buildings and roughly the locations on the site?
Programming is going to tell you what your needs are, is going to essentially put a framework around the needs, today's needs and the future needs of the operation. So it's going to determine the total square footages that are needed. How much of that square footage is going to be into an office building? How much is it going to be warehousing? How much of those square footages total is going to be operational? How much is going to be outside storage? How much is going to be indoor storage? Those are the kind of things that programming decides. How many people do you have on your staff that you're going to house there? What is the size of a supervisor's office? What is the minimum size of a cubicle, 8 by 8, 10 by 10, for a person with a computer that is going to come in and fill out work orders? Those are the kind of things that are going to be addressed by programming. Do we need a shower facility, full shower, with emergency showers for cleanup outside or inside? Are we going to have a lunch facility for the folks? What's the size of the locker room is going to be? Those are the kind of things that are going to be decided. The elements of what the building and the facility is going to look like is going to be defined in the programming exercise.
Okay.
Can I jump in real quick?
sure.
In the world I come from, a lot of this is what's called requirements. And so hopefully one of the products will be something that captures all of those needs or requirements, along with things that start to look a little bit more like something to how we meet the requirements, which would be a very rough conceptual design. Is that a fair characterization?
It's a very fair characterization, yes, sir.
Okay. I don't know how often progressive design build is used. What size projects would you say this is progressive design build is typically used for?
You can certainly use it for a project of this size. In fact, the law tells you that the law that went into effect in 2024, January 1, 2024, it allowed the cities to use that. It says, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me, it says 10 projects with a value of each one $5 million or more. The cities can use progressive design build. So the law contemplates on an entity, an owner, to build a project using this model that is only $5 million in value, construction value.
Okay, but my question was, what is it typically, I know that it's allowed, but what is it typically used for? What types of projects is it typically used for?
Other cities have used that to build city halls, city facilities. In my view, progressive design build, again, the benefit of it is a reduction, and all of those pros that we enumerated. It's reduction, potential reduction of time, delivery time. In this particular case, we estimate that to be anywhere between 1 to 3 months. That period, that saving period of time gets expanded once you get into projects larger than 20, 25, 30, 40, $50 million. Then you're going to save considerably more time or more complex projects. When you are designing a tunnel for the metro downtown, complex, different trades, different coordination between different trades, that's where you're going to really see savings in time.
Have any other local cities used progressive design build that you're aware of?
The law has gone into effect, it's about a year and a half, 2 years old. I'm sure someone has jumped on that. Would be happy to report with a fact who has used this model. And we want to make sure that they have used it and they've used it successfully to deliver the project. We'll be happy to investigate that. I didn't see anything. I looked at it and I didn't see anything, perhaps because it's so new. Cities have done design build in the past. City of Long Beach, I think they designed their city hall, the new city hall, using that. There are different cities that have used design build in the past I know of.
So, and just to clarify, it's my understanding that when they did the North School, that was a design build project. Is that correct?
I'm not particularly familiar with that particular campus or site, but I have done design build in schools in the past. And
I'm
school
specifically
districts use
interested in that one.
In that one?
My understanding is it was not design build. It was a traditional model.
Okay, because I've got a councilman barking in my ear that, oh, they did it design build and it was so great. Why can't we do that? And so, okay. So either way, it either wasn't design build or it wasn't progressive design build because it was done too long ago. Is that valid?
Forgive me, Chairman, but the school districts were able to do progressive design build before the cities were able to do that.
Okay.
So I have to find out when that school, and I'll be happy to investigate
I'm
that.
very interested because I think it was traditional design build. I could be wrong. And I want to make sure that council understands that what we're proposing here is very likely not what was done there. Because some of them I don't think understand that.
It takes a phone call to their facilities department, talk to the director, find out some facts. and
That'd
we'll
be
definitely share that.
great. And then when this goes to council, if you can clarify that, that'd be good. So how do you make sure if you're hiring 100% based on qualifications, how do you make sure that when the time comes, the contractor doesn't decide to put a 50% fee on it? You know, or that's a gross exaggeration, but how do you make sure that they don't, you know, just stuff their GCs and fee to make ridiculous profit with no competition?
Let me go to an example that I've personally experienced with. There was a design-build process, not progressive, where we were haggling with the contractor because the cost was coming much higher than the one that we had discussed previously throughout the early stages of the design. And then so we were going back and forth with the contractors, looking at their performa, looking at their cost estimating. And you know, we hired our own cost estimator to compare the numbers. And we finally figured out the cost of all things, the windows were much higher in one estimate, contractors, than the other ones, and was more reflective of the condition of the market. So, you know, we did a little bit more investigation, found out that this particular contractor had a vested interest in a window manufacturing company that was spec'd out in their design proposal to be used in that building. There could be surprises. There could be a point that you are not going to agree with the price that they're going to come up with, but then you have to go a lot of back and forth, examining the documents, you know, examining the estimates that they're providing to you. So there are no guarantees, Chairman, and that's where having a very strong team behind you is going to assist you with that.
But the example you use is very,
Rare.
very different because it was traditional design build. You had a number up front that was competitively bid.
Forgive me. This was for a design build,
Right.
traditional design
You did
build.
a traditional design build, and in order for them to get that project, they had to submit a GMP as a bid.
Yes.
So you had a number, it was competitively bid at some point.
Yes.
Whatever happened afterwards, that happens on every project. My question is, you're going to hire somebody just on qualifications, and they have no incentive to have a low price.
I think I mentioned in my, when we were discussing that, we have to keep in mind that when you're hiring a design build team, either way, through the traditional or through the progressive model, we have to keep in mind that the driver in that scheme is the contractor. And the incentive for the contractor is to maximize their profit margin. That is just the reality. Now, when you go to the design bid build, that gets tempered a little bit because they have to compete against other contractors.
In design build, they're competing as well.
Design build teams are competing against one another when you're submitting their proposal to you based on their, not a price, because in a progressive model, you are not getting a price up front, but based on their qualifications.
Right, but traditional design build, they are also competing on price, correct?
Yes, yes.
So, I mean, I'll get more into this when we get into deliberations, but, so when, let's say we go progressive design build, we get through we get towards the end, and the contractor puts the project out to bid to their subcontractors, and how does the city get to see the subcontractor bids?
No.
So it talks about in here that it's an open book. PDP contract requires that parties negotiate the construction price on an open book basis. So how is that open book?
If you do not agree, remember, at the 100% design process, 100% design, they're going to come in with a price for you. That's in the progressive model. And if you do not agree with that price, then we have to start looking at the structure of that price. That's where the open book comes in.
Right, so how do we know they're going to put, the GC is going to put it out to the subcontractor community? And maybe they get 3 to 5 bids per trade. How do we know they're not taking, that they're taking the most economical bid that's best for the city and not the one that's safe for them?
There are no guarantees
Okay.
as far as the city is concerned.
That's not my understanding of what open book means. I mean, I do this for a living, and open book means, here's all my subcontractor bids. You want to talk about it? You know, this guy bid $1 million, and I put in my bid $1,050,000 because he missed some scope, you know, and that's what I did. That's open book. Okay. And then you made a comment about if the progressive design build contractor says they have in their schedule that things have to be turned around in a week, that the city has to turn them around in a week. That seemed a little odd
Well,
to me.
I was using that as an extreme case.
I get
Obviously,
it,
you know,
but
it's-
like, you know, the turnaround, it just seems odd that turnaround times for, I mean, I get it, it's a city project, but that it's would be different for this contractor than it would be for any other contractor doing a private project.
Well, Chairman Hayes, what I was trying to get at is the fact that the city has to have a structure ready to follow the schedule, the agreed schedule, as far as the progress of the work is concerned. So you have to assemble a team that is going to be ready to work with the design build team every step of the way and deliver the project according to the timeline that has been agreed upon. So, and again, this was a compare and contrast with the design bid build, because when you are doing the design process separate from the building process, there is more leeway. And perhaps some of that is the time that you are going to save between the design build as opposed to the design bid build, because those slippages are not there anymore.
Okay.
And I'm going to take one point, and going back to the open book, you're absolutely correct. But, you know, again, the point that I was trying to make, you are looking at their books. You know, they have 5 subcontractors that they shopped, and they are sharing that information with you. But where was the incentive? You know, my point is, where is the incentive for the contractor to make sure that those subcontractors' prices are the absolute best that you can get in the marketplace? That was, I think, the point that I was trying to make.
Okay. Finally, I might have more when we deliberate, but so there are thousands and thousands of contractors that do design bid build work. How big is the contractor pool for progressive design build work of this size?
I am sure that if we took this route of delivering this particular project using progressive design build, we are going to have adequate number of folks that are going to participate in a pre-qualification phase that we can select from.
Okay.
I mean, it's a considerable size project. It's still $20 million project.
I understand that, but my understanding is that this procurement method is usually used for much, much bigger projects, and that this would be on the very small side for this procurement method. That's not to say that you're not right, but, and then you also indicated that you would not be amenable to a design builder who was a contractor that went to an architect that he works with regularly and said, hey, let's put a package together. I mean, you basically said that. You wanted somebody who's done this before, which I appreciate, but I'm concerned about the bid pool, the pool of qualified bidders.
Understood, but again, the preference would be to hire, when we are going through qualification and examining the team, that it would be a team that has worked together in the past before, successfully delivered projects. You don't want a team, you don't want to hire a team that this would be their first time collaborating on a project.
Okay, I think that's all I have for now. Are there any other questions?
I'd like to ask a kind of related question to what you started to ask about. This example, some of these questions have to do with some of the risks that we have while we're working with the design-build contractor that we've hired. How can we control them and protect ourselves? And another thing that you also alluded to earlier, and it's mentioned in the report, is what happens if at some point we have a falling out with them altogether and we decide to terminate, and it talks about we can terminate the relationship and have to pay them the design costs and things like that. So I guess one question would be, during this architectural programming phase, isn't that also our opportunity where we could define not only technical requirements, but perhaps lay out some key milestones and some programmatic milestones that might help us to manage those risks of that, executing that, working with the design build team? I don't know if you got lost in my words. Should I ask it again?
Perhaps if I can hear it one more time.
So there's, during the architectural programming phase,
Yes.
could we start designing our programmatic milestones in a way that might help mitigate the risks of working with the design-build contractor?
The short answer is no. The purpose of programming, again, as I alluded to and as Mr. Sanclemente mentioned, is based on your current needs and future needs. The picture of defining a picture of what the facility is going to look like, and the square footages, adjacencies, those kind of things. But as far as getting into the future relationship between the city and defining milestones for the future relationship between the city and a design-build team, no, that's not a part of that exercise.
Would we still be laying out a preliminary schedule for how we'd like to see the program unfold?
Not as part of the architectural programming exercise, no.
Okay, so in my opinion, the word programming is a little misleading because it's more technical than it is programmatic, but, okay.
It's a terminology that my architect friends use, and
Okay.
we stay with that.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? All right. Do we have any public comment in the chambers? Welcome.
Welcome. Good evening. My name is Bill Hallett, resident at 935 Loma Drive since 1970. I don't know if I'm a day late and dollar short, but I was walking along Loma Drive the other day and I saw a sign on the only pine tree on Loma Drive that's going to be removed. Is that for tonight, or did I miss it, or is it somebody tore the sign off of it when I walked by the other day?
So it's definitely not for tonight. Joe might have some.
Mr. Hallett, so that item was removed from the agenda. It was never posted. There was consideration for move of that tree. We've gone back to the applicant for further consideration. So right now, it's not a matter at commission. It's possible it could come back for the next meeting, but not for tonight. In that case, we would, if it does come back, we would likely renotice and rehang a notice on the tree should it come back.
Okay, I thank you very much, and I appreciate everybody for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment online?
No, Chair. We have anyone on Zoom looking to make a public comment.
All right, I'll bring it back here and see if anybody would like to begin deliberations.
Okay, I just have to clarify what I hear, and I like all your input and so forth. My understanding is traditional, the architect designs it, it's approved, and then it's turned over to the contractor. The contractor then has to deal with the design and make sure it's up to standard as far as what he can buy, what he can do as far as modern equipment, different costs, different materials, after the fact as the design. The progressive is the architect and the contractor work together so that the contractor has input up front as to what the complications would be, the code enforcement, material costs, and complications. That's the difference, the two. The two work together, or the other one is the architect does it, turn it over to the contractor, and then he has to figure out how to get it done. Is that my understanding?
I'll let staff answer.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Commissioner, yes and no. In the design bid build, you have a set of plans and documents that well defines what the contractor has to do. So the contractor knows exactly what to do because the plans are going to tell him what to build. And then the instructions and the specifications tell him how to build it. It's in the design build process, the team of design builder are going to do that for you as part of the same process, not a separate process. So the only difference between those two processes is that one is going to get done, completed before you turn it over, as you mentioned, to the contractor. In the other model, in this case, progressive design build, as you alluded to, the contractor and the designer are going to be working with the city hand in hand to develop the set of plans together. Yes.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I've got a pretty good amount to say, and I'll look forward to hearing what else others might have. So I'm going to go through my notes. Let's see. For me, since this is a relatively large and complex project, even at least by our standards, I think it's important that we pick an option that we feel enables us to control risk in the best way. I think that risk management is going to be a real important part of this. In looking at some of the pros and cons of the different options, one thing that was mentioned was the difference in schedule. I think that the difference in the nominal schedule between the two approaches is probably small compared to the schedule risk that we might incur. I think that if some unplanned event occurs, it may stretch the program far beyond whatever that nominal difference is. So I don't see the schedule differences as being a big driver for the selection of which route to go. In terms of costs, and also back to risk and cost risk, if we can lay out a program, I like the one feature is that we do, as we're working with the contractor, the design build contractor, we do periodically update the cost estimates, the amount of contingency typically will go down because we have a better understanding of the design and the risks. So I like the collaborative nature there in terms of working closely with the contractor in terms of mitigating cost risk. Eventually, it will come to a point where we do get that guaranteed maximum price. So I sense that on one hand, while we're not guaranteed a bid cost like we are when we go into design bid build, because we get that bid and it is what it is, I think there are still opportunities for cost risk mitigation as we work through, as long as we're really good about updating our cost estimates and we feel that we're getting credible cost estimates with an appropriate amount of contingency built in there. There's also in the pros and cons this idea of the city having some amount of design control. And I think that if we do that early phase, that architectural programming phase, and we put a lot of work into the requirements and the conceptual design, and we have really strong requirements, we might find downstream that we don't have quite as much control in some of the finer details of the design. But if we do our job right, and if we have a good collaborative relationship with the contractor, I think there is a way, and if we have a strong owner's representative, there is a way we can have perhaps an acceptable amount of design control. And one thing I should have said, maybe if I wanted to summarize at the onset, the owner's representative is key. We may end up not really knowing for sure that we're doing design build until we go interview for get an owner's rep. What I'm leaning towards for now is that we would recommend leaning towards the design build and write our RFQ for the owner rep and in the hopes that we then get an owner's rep that we can get on board who's truly experienced with design build, that we think can work well with the contractor we select. And I think that a strong owner's rep could mitigate some of the disadvantages inherent in the design build process. So what I'm saying is I'd like to, thinking of this optimistically, I would like to lean towards trying the design build so we can get the advantages and then get a strong owner's rep to manage the potential disadvantages. So I think that's where I'm at, sort of in the grand scheme of things. And then similarly, just as I recognize the owner's rep to be important, I think that whoever we get on board for the architectural programming contractor, that's going to be really important as well, because the degree to which we're able to work successfully with them to, again, define the requirements and make some of the really important sort of fundamental design decisions, in the concept design, even though they're not detailed designs, a lot of the costs in a project can be determined right up front through the requirements and some of those fundamental decisions. So I like that the progressive design build places a lot of emphasis on the architectural programming. So again, it comes back to if we get the right people. So if we get a strong OR and a strong architectural programming contractor, then I think we've got a good chance of reaping the benefits of that approach. And then at the same time, I was kind of looking for ways that we can mitigate some of the risks of actually working with the design build contractor. I still share some potential concerns about that. And one question I didn't ask, and maybe you don't have to answer it now, but at some point we should maybe talk about, is what happens if we do have a falling out with the design build contractor and we do go our separate ways? What happens? Do we refer to a design bid build model at that point? So maybe you can put that question on hold and answer it at some point in the future. So that's that. Again, we talked about the financing. In the schedule, you don't show the actual financial plan, but I think having a financial plan is something we want to put in our own, do for our own planning. It probably just wasn't shown in this, maybe that wasn't considered a city council action, but it is going to be important that we get the plan in place. I guess everybody knows that. So that's going to be another important milestone that I did not see in this particular schedule. When we were talking about what I call, requirements, there was talk about operations, and I agree that operations is really important. The city yard operations, I think that a lot of our requirements are going to be derived from some sort of an operational analysis. And for planning purposes, I think it'll be really important to get the actual O&M team on board, and I expect Joe recognizes that at least from his top team on O&M, they're going to have to spend some of their time participating in the process to help make sure that we capture those operational requirements. And to be a little more specific, I'm talking about things like workflow. I'm talking about the flow of materials, personnel, equipment, including vehicles, storage, all kinds of things like that. And also, while we're talking about operations, looking at them not just when the project is complete, but of course we need to recognize, and I think it's recognized in the report, operations in terms of while we're doing the construction, right? Whether everybody just moves off site, or can we do some sort of a phased, construction so that we can work our way through that interim period. So again, the idea of getting input from operations people in defining the program as well as the technical requirements, I think is going to be really important. I think we recognize that rehabilitation is an important, kind of unique aspect to this program. Being really good about thinking hard about how we're going to do the rehabilitation and phased rehabilitation with demolition and with construction. That's another thing that we should look hard at in terms of defining some of the program when we're looking at, and that's kind of an example maybe of some things that when I was asking, can we define the schedule, maybe some of those things like interspersing rehabilitation and operations considerations are some things we would want to work into our schedule when we go to develop the schedule. And you made the point about that when this moves, it could move fast. And I certainly agree that we should get going on this now, and I don't think we have anything to lose as long as we're ready to embark on the first phase with the architectural programming and the OR. But on the heels of that, if we want to keep momentum going, then we'll bring on the design-build contractor, and then, as John stated, things should move there. So I would respectfully say that, we need to make sure that the cities really and council are going to be really committed to doing this, and the reality is, we're still talking about what's going to happen with the Civic Center, what's going to happen with our huge backlog of CIP. So while I agree that this is overdue and we should get going, if we're going to get going, we may really be going, and we need to make sure that people realize this is really coming and that council's ready to commit to it. So that's my one very high-level comment I have, that's aside from which path should we take, I think. And those are most of my comments for now. If I have any other that are critical, I'll make them later. Thanks.
Tor?
We're in the discussion phase, I
Yes.
take it? Yeah. I don't have as much to say as my colleague. It seems to me that we are looking to build something functional and practical, a great environment for a great team that is modern, clean, it's a great place to work. We're not building a piece of monumental architecture. So on the one hand, it might be a good place to start to experiment with a new way of building. However, when I hear some of the ways in which we see council functioning as it is, and some of the back and forth and the change in plans and things, it might not be the best option in the sense that we are kind of on the hook, especially when we're looking at a long list of other CIPs that also need to be prioritized. And I think, in a sense, it removes some flexibility from our side. And I think Chairman Hayes had some really good points about, well, wait a minute, we don't know about the costs or this or that or the other. There's no real competition once a vendor is chosen. And I think because of how the city operates currently, we might want that flexibility. That might be an advantage to us compared to, nope, here you go. You have 2 weeks to reply. I think also, in addition to that, it's a good opportunity. I think sticking to a traditional method also allows, at least as we are today, for more public participation and input and feedback from the community. I think this could be a really exciting way of approaching projects in the future. I'm just not sure that the timing is correct and that this is the right kind of project. And I would like to see, as Chairman Hayes asked, for other examples, other cities, other places. You know, I can understand if the UCLA wants to build a brand new flagship building or something and they use this method, absolutely. But we're looking, I think, for something more functional and modern and inspiring for our workforce here, and that's operationally efficient, as Chairman Geitens, Commissioner Geitens pointed out. So it seems to me, based on some of the comments that have come in, that it's a very compelling method, but it might not be one that is strategically appropriate for what we want to achieve right now, and with the city finances and operations as they currently are. There's just at least some reflections I wanted to bring up.
I'd like to pile on a question that David asked. If we have a falling out, well, you talked about that with the progressive design build, that we won't have that massive set of documents, right? It'll be much more streamlined. And then in the staff report, it says, city can terminate relationship with the progressive design build team. This could take place even up to 100% of the design phase by simply paying the team for planning and design costs incurred, provided the city has reserved rights to the design product in the original agreement. My question is, if that happens and we have a streamlined set of plans, those plans wouldn't be ready to go out to a design bid build bid situation, correct? They wouldn't be adequate. I don't know that. My experience with design build is usually with subcontractors, and they won't let another contractor work off of their plans. Is that the case here as well?
It will be the case, Chairman.
So you can separate the thing, but you're starting from square one if you separate from the contractor.
If the assumption is that you are going to get 100% set of plans that is going to look like that, you're absolutely correct. You are not. You are going to get, because you had put in the provisions of your agreement with the design build team, that if you do not agree on a price, then you own those documents. But you're absolutely correct. Those documents are not something that I can work on a little bit, touch it, and then go to bid it out to get a contractor to come in and build it for me. Because the contractor and his architect had taken on the risk of making changes to the design, as you said, those are the things that are handled in their shops and are not necessarily reflected in a set of documents that they're going to turn over to you. Absolutely.
Okay, and on top of that, you said more than once, if we did get to a point where we needed to separate, we don't really know how much the design is worth. So they could just say, hey, that design is worth $5 million, and obviously we'd be arguing about it, but it's going to be a discussion. We don't have a preset value for design.
Yes, sir. In that sort of a relationship, there is no requirement for the design-build team upfront to segregate the cost of design from the overall cost of the project, because that's a negotiated price supposedly after the 100% design has been completed.
I have a big problem with this, not in overall concept, but with how this would work in this city. I can't imagine the line of people who would, if this project went bad, the line of people who would be out that door and down the street saying, you guys went to contract without a final amount. How in the world could you commit the city to this? You know, how do you award a contract without an amount? It's basically an open checkbook. And while, and I'm not saying that that's exactly what's happening here, but if this job goes bad, you're going to hear people say that. I really dislike the idea of not knowing even basic costs. What is the fee on the project going to be? What are the GCs on the project going to be? What's the design cost going to be? Without that information, I don't see how you go to contract. We've seen on multiple projects, including the Kelly Court and the Clark Building, that the council likes to make changes and sometimes design from up here. Once you start a progressive design build contract, even if you're in the early stages, the clock has started on that contract for that contractor. If the council makes changes, boom, next day, change order, delay. You said how important a contractor wants to get in, wants to get out. When council makes a change, they're going to have their hand out immediately. Everybody worries about the change orders during the construction phase. You're going to have change orders in the design phase. I don't see how this turns out well for us here. David talked about the opportunity for city input. In my mind, you have just as much opportunity for city input with design bid build or design build. Design bid build, the city has input with the architect as their, and all of the consultants as they're putting the plans together to get it ready for permit. It's, and then it basically stops. Whereas it's a little bit different. You're kind of more through with the progressive design build. So the city needs to do their homework and work with the design team up front. I don't think you lose anything as far as city input with design bid build. I really, my daytime job is I estimate construction projects. It's what I do for a living. And if you don't have a competitive situation, the contractor is going to put their thumb on the scale to protect themselves. They're going to put line item contingency in every line item, and then, oh yeah, we're giving back the contingency at the bottom, but all that line item contingency is still going to be there. And you have no way of knowing it. I don't believe that the books are going to be as open as you think. I think you need to see every subcontractor bid. I think you got a line in here about the construction manager will solicit bids from key trades. Why is it the construction manager? It should be the contractor. The contractor is the one with relationships. The construction manager is a retired guy who's got back into the business, and his relationships with the subcontractors are 5 years old. There's too many things, and I cannot support this. I said, anybody else have any other comments?
I just wondered if there's any response to that.
To which part of the points, excellent points that were brought up.
And I asked a question.
Please.
Let him respond to mine, please.
If I may, before any of that, and I'm in full transparency, I'm relying on ChatGPT with regards to the question that you asked, which cities have completed a project through the progressive design build. These are the lists that I have in front of me, and I don't know if the project has been completed or they have started. And most of them are not cities, and I'll tell you why. East Valley Water District, it's a wastewater plant. LA Department of Water Power, water infrastructure. City of Burbank, the only city in this list. It's a park facility. It doesn't really define what it is. Maybe it's just, I don't know exactly what it is. And then Caltrans and transit agencies for future roads, meaning that they haven't even done it, but they're contemplating on doing it. The reason that the East Valley Water District, LA Department of Water Power has done is because they were allowed to do that prior to 2024. 2024, 706, SB 706 became law, allowed the cities to participate in that process. Before that, the water agencies, special districts were allowed to do that. And Chairman, you said something that you touched on before, the open book. Absolutely, you're correct. When you're going with an open book negotiation with a contractor, you are comparing contractor against contractor for a set project. But when you're relying on your design build team to show you your open books, you don't really know if they're open books or not, honestly, because they don't have an incentive to create a competition between their subcontractors to give you the best price.
Right, so how can we support that? We're saying we're giving them an opportunity to not be fair with us.
Well, I think we are trying to paint a picture of all the pros and cons, and then based on that, urge you please to guide us to which way you think is the best way for the city to contemplate on completing this project.
So Commissioner Britton asked for you to refute everything that I said and tell me how wrong I am. And I'd like to present that opportunity to you.
I was nodding my head in agreement with everything that you were saying, Chairman.
So my understanding then is, I guess the point is, once we turn it over, the city loses control. And then the architect and the contractor do what they do, and we have no control after that point.
Commissioner Britton, I went back to the slide and put it up there for us to take a look again. Honestly, it all depends, and I think the chairman made a mention of this, how a model is best suited for a type of operation and decision-making process that we have. Some cities operate differently than others. I have witnessed, and I'm looking at it from the outside inside. I've had the good opportunity to work with your team for the last 2.5 years. Every project that I have been a part of, and I have seen, small or larger scale, there has been a tremendous, and for good reason and good measure, tremendous amount of collaboration and deliberation and stakeholder participation. And this project is, as you mentioned, and you mentioned, Commissioner, this is not going to be an exception. People are going to have expectations. It behooves all of us to make sure either way we are going to meet the expectations of the public. This is a project that has been long awaited for, and we are trying to deliver it. So the end product is going to be looked upon with a microscope by everyone, and we better meet the expectations of everyone that has been looking at it getting done. So again, going back to the question, it really depends on how we feel is the best way to deliver the project, given the structure that we have, the decision-making structure that we have. It's extremely important, because at the end of the day, you don't want anyone to come back and say, how come I didn't see this? How come I didn't know about that? Why is it looking like this where I anticipated and my vision was something completely different than yours? In the design build, you have a better chance of controlling those things. You have a better chance of going out there to your public and participate. Make sure the stakeholders are participating in the design process. You're in the construction business, so you know during the charade exercises that they do with the architects, they come in and invite the members of the public to provide their input. And some of that input goes into the process of design. You necessarily won't have those opportunities if you go the other route. Those are the serious considerations that the city has to make to see what is, honestly, at the end of the day, what is going to make the city happy with the outcome, and how are we going to achieve that.
I'd like to add one more thing, too. Thank you, John. There was a comment Commissioner Grayson made, and I think it's an important point that you're talking about, is if we were to consider the progressive design build model, there's the incentive of this. I think you mentioned a more schedule control, that it's tighter. We're committed to a quick, fast-moving schedule. And if I'm interpreting what you said correctly, it seemed that would help encourage council to keep moving with the project and move it along. And I think one thing I want to emphasize is no matter which way we go, I can't emphasize how much this project needs to get done under either method. I think staff will continue to push to get this done because I really do think we are at a critical point with the yard. We need to fix it. I think we've kicked it down the road far enough. It needs to happen under either model. I think where maybe some concern I have with the progressive design build schedule is that if there are milestones that does put added pressure into staff, or where we need to get decision points for council and commission. And so I think when we looked at the overall schedule, I mean, you said it best, it's really a wash. Maybe we save some time, maybe we don't with one of the models. Overall, we're looking at a wash with the overall schedule. It's really gonna be those choke points. Our staff is slammed day to day. We can't predict the ebb and flow of emergencies, unplanned work, other priorities that are gonna come in. I think there's more flexibility in the traditional design build model because we're able to fit in unplanned emergencies through those tasks, keep designs moving along. I think it's still going to take commitment no matter what we do to push this thing over the finish line once and for all. It's been on the books way too long. But I do think we're at that critical point that we have to move it. So I think that's the distinction that I want to make, is that the schedule is the same. It's really about what happens along that way and the decision points that we have to make in the choke points that happen along the way.
Mr. Grayson, I think you had a question?
Yeah, well, I appreciate everything my colleagues have said. It's starting to appear that there are risks inherent in the approach and that it's not necessarily a good fit for us. I went into this hopeful that there were advantages we could take advantage of, and I was thinking a lot in terms of managing the risks of the program. But now I'm seeing that there may be the highest risk of all is just a risk inherent in the approach itself. And so we could either, take a position as a body that, so right now we think it's too risky, and you need to tell us how you're going to make this work. But after hearing some of the other input, I think we're closer to just saying thanks, but no thanks.
I think you summed it up well. It's an interesting concept. It sounds like an amazing approach in certain contexts and for certain situations, but it doesn't seem like it's a good fit for us right now with what we need.
So one thing that you said that I really liked is let's make pre-qualifying GCs a regular thing for projects of a certain size. I think that this is a prime project for it. It's one of the larger volume projects we've done in a while, and I think that would be a great thing to do. And that process can start almost immediately. So, what? You've another comment?
Well, both approaches did call for getting an owner's representative on board, and ultimately, at some point, someone to start doing, a concept design and doing requirements, so,
Very, very strongly recommended, Commissioner.
just because we don't necessarily favor one approach or another, that doesn't mean we can't get started. We can.
Either way, you have to have an owner rep to get
Yeah.
you going with the processes that you need to start with, starting with the environmental assessment. Correct.
So, city attorney, what do we need to do now? Do we need to make a vote for our recommendation, or?
I think it would be helpful.
I think we're going to do a recommendation and preference from the commissioners.
Okay, so the way, I'm sensing a consensus, I'm going to pose the question as, do you support design, bid, build? Yes means you support design, bid, build, no means you don't.
Yes, I think that suffices.
Okay. So,
Can I ask would there be any appetite on staff's part to try to address the risks that we brought up that are inherent in design build? If there's not, then I'm fine with just
I kind of got the
Ending
impression that a lot of it isn't up to us. A lot of it is up to the contractor or the design build, the progressive design build company, and those terms are rather fixed. It doesn't sound, because you asked quite a few questions, and he basically shut everything down and said, no, you can't really, it's not really open for that. Was my impression. Feel free to correct me.
That's correct, sir. I mean, for the most part, the design build team are the ones that are driving the process, entire process.
So I think we've got about all the information and all the risk assessment we're going to get. So I think we can take a position then.
okay, then I don't usually make motions from here, but I'm going to move that we recommend to City Council that the City Yard project proceed on a design, bid, build basis. Anybody second?
I would second that.
Can we have a roll call, please?
And you did say design, bid.
Design, bid, build.
Okay.
Okay, to clarify, we're not saying one or the other, we're just saying moving forward with the project. Is that correct?
We're saying that we recommend to City Council that the procurement method to be used for the City Yard project is design, bid, build.
The traditional method.
Okay, I'm opposed to that.
That's fine.
And what I see here is that we just provide feedback, we don't take a side.
I asked the
According
city
to our
attorney
action, recommended action.
and the,
So we're going to do feedback on preferences, which is the recommendation part.
Okay,
so,
so we do take a recommendation on which side, is that what I'm hearing?
right, so all I'm saying is that my motion was that we recommend to council to proceed with design, bid, build. And we were going to vote on that just so that council can see that it was 3-2, 4-1, 5-0, and they can use that information as they see fit.
I think a vote on that would be helpful, and then to specify whether it is traditional or just specify as much
Okay.
as you can within the questioning.
So, yeah, I would just modify my motion to say that the motion is to proceed with the traditional design, bid, build procurement method.
So I got a couple questions. I know there's already a second. So as far as what we can do and not tonight, your interpretation is that provide feedback on preferences could include this motion with a specific recommendation?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And Director, are you comfortable that we take a position one way or the other, or would you prefer that your options were left open?
My preference would be that we get direction on a preferred option.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we have a motion second. Any other discussion? Can we take a roll call, please?
Yes, roll call for the motion to recommend the traditional design bid build method for the city yard. Commissioner Britton, how do you vote?
No.
No. Commissioner Dunbarton, how do you vote?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Lakeville,
Yes.
Vice Chair Grethen,
Aye.
and Chairperson Hayes.
Yes.
That is 1 no from Commissioner Britton and 4 yes from the remaining commissioners.
All right. Great discussion. Next on the agenda is future agenda items. We have any future agenda items? Kind of related, but not exactly. There's been a future agenda item on council's agenda for a long time about the Public Works Commission involvement in stuff like this. Is that are we gonna see something on that? Is that, what's the?
Yes, we do need to bring that to council soonish. I think staff has been trying to get budget out of the way, and now we're reorienting to trying to follow up on some of the action items that we need to do. I think there's also a request to bring an item on tree fees at some point that we would bring, that would be illegal removal of trees on the citation amount. So that's something we would bring to commission first and then to council. But those are the two that are coming to mind right now.
May I?
Sure.
And actually, I was going to bring up trees tonight, too. Where is it said that whenever one tree is removed, that that person has to replace it with 2? Is that, I can't even tell you when that was written into the rule or whatever.
I don't know where it is, but it's definitely in there. I
It's
looked
in the
hard for
municipal
that
code.
when it was,
It's
when
in
I
the
was on
tree
the other
section.
side of this.
Yeah, so you think a tree for a tree?
I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just
don't
saying that when
say
I was on the other
right,
side,
Right,
I made
Okay,
sure that the
yes.
code actually said that.
okay. So I don't know if that's something that could be discussed at the same time.
So the request from council was to bring an item forward about looking at the citation amount for the prohibited removal of a tree.
Yeah.
I think they did ask for also looking at the ordinance as a whole, and I will say that staff has been eyeing some other sections of that section of the code that we're finding that might need some further clarification, which is another reason why that one, we've been taking a little bit longer to bring it back, because we've even been assessing as we've been getting new tree removal requests, some various scenarios that have come up. So I do expect that when we bring it, there'll be a few different things in that section for consideration.
So I would just request that when it does come up, that it be put on the agenda in such a way that we can make wider changes and that it's not too narrow, to just be tree fees or whatever.
Comment about the history of the 2-to-1. Yes, it's in the code.
Yep.
It was put in there at the time we revised the tree code, but my recollection is this body did not put it in. It was added right afterward, because where this originated is it's in Plan Hermosa as one of the policies. So that's the lineage or the heritage of that requirement. It's from Plan Hermosa.
And I have the municipal code section, if that would be helpful for you, for the 2-to-1 tree ratio. It's chapter 12.36.060E. That's just the section that states the 2-to-1 tree ratio. Yes.
Okay, moving on, no public comments. We didn't have public comment earlier. That brings us to adjournment. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.